now, good Monday afternoon, and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are with you for the next 3 hours talking all things K-State basketball, NFL, major trade request earlier on today. We'll talk some Royals baseball as we near opening day and so much more, all coming up between 3 and 6 Central Time right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. Thank you for stopping by and spending the early part of your week with us. We've got a ton to get to on 580 Sports Talk today. We, of course, will start with the end of Kansas State's season. They fell, as we all know, to Florida Atlantic on Saturday. We will look back on that game, what went wrong, the errors at the end of it, and what was an incredible season and an incredible run for K-State that, unfortunately, while the loss does not change how amazing that all was, that doesn't make it hurt any less either. So we'll talk all about that coming up here in just a minute to lead things off. Also this hour, we'll recap the entire sports weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated is going to join us for our weekly NFL chat. A former MVP has asked for a trade. And no, I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers. Lamar Jackson wants out. Now, will he actually get that trade? I don't know, but he's asked for one. So we'll talk to Matt about all that and much more coming up later on this hour. Also coming up today, we'll start our Royals season preview conversations. We'll start with position players today. We're just 3 days away from opening day.
Yeah, we are.
That's exciting. I am more excited this year, I think, than I have been in recent years. And I mean, you know this feeling when your team is, looks like they're going to be better or at least competitive. I think it's a little bit easier to get up for the start of the season.
As a Rockies fan, I wouldn't know anything about that. Not in recent memory.
I was going to say, you've had a couple years. Okay, I don't want to be mean. I'm really not intending to.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, no, you're a Cubs fan. They invested and bought some high-profile free agents and tried to make their team better. How much better is an open question, but they tried to be better. And that's far too uncommon in Major League Baseball these days.
Yeah, and the Royals, look, I'll just be blunt. I don't think they're going to be very good, but there's at least a number of players worth watching. Bobby Witt, Vinny Pasquantino, MJ Melendez, Salvi's always fun. Maybe some of the other young guys really step up.
Yeah, by virtue of talking about the position players, we're getting to the fun stuff first.
That's why we're doing that today.
Yeah.
I didn't want to start the week talking about pitching.
Thank God.
We'll get to that tomorrow. So we'll talk about the Royals position players coming up here in just a little bit later on today. We've also got plenty more college basketball to get to. We're going to talk about the Final Four. We do have what I think is a really fun Final Four, unless I guess you're one of those weirdos who only cares about big programs or cares about CBS's ratings, in which case you're weird. And that's just being blunt. I don't know why you would care about TV ratings, but fine. Also, we have a segment coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. I don't know what it is. Dan told me he's got a question for me, and that will lead into something else. So I'm in the dark about this, but I'm very curious as to what our 5 o'clock hour college basketball chat is going to be about. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
We'll also get to, of course, our first What Is Wrong With You of the week. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. And, of course, we will take your texts and your comments as well on the YouTube stream. Texts can go to 785-272-9429. And, of course, the comment section is open on YouTube Sports on 580 WIBW. We will also, later in the show, be doing one more round of entries to register for our Royals opening day ticket giveaway. We're going to do that a little bit later on in the show. We're going to keep that a mystery. So you've got to listen in and be ready. All you're going to have to do is text in your name to the text line. If you already entered on Friday, you're in. So don't feel the need to re-enter. You are already in if you entered on Friday, and we'll do another round of that coming up later on today. But let's dive right into the start, or the end, I should say, start of the show, end of the season for the Kansas State Wildcats. They fall in what was another great game, 79-76 to Florida Atlantic. And I know if you're a K-State fan, you're not thinking about the quality of basketball right now, probably. You're thinking, damn it, we lost to a mid-major program in the Elite Eight again. We had a caller either last week or...
It was last week. Yeah, asking about most consecutive regional finals games lost. We can now confirm that after an 8th consecutive regional final loss, Kansas State's got the record. It's not a record you want.
No, it stinks. And I thought late in the game, Marquise Noel banks in a 3. And I had been saying for a couple possessions that, man, I feel like K-State's going to wrap this up. This feels like K-State's finally going to do it. My wife was all excited. I think it's going to happen. And he banks in a 3. And I said immediately, I said, oh, yeah, K-State won. Like, that they're winning this game. And I feel bad. I'm sorry for mushing K-State a little bit, but it seriously felt like even though Florida Atlantic was giving its best punch and was playing well and was making shots and Vlad Golden was dominating inside, it just felt like K-State had an answer for everything. And that's great until all of a sudden you don't have the answers. They got Roddy Pipered, right? It was just when you think you have all the answers, I changed the questions. That's what happened at the end of the game. And out of nowhere, Florida Atlantic was on a 15-1 run. And I know it's painful to look back on. There's a lot of, and I saw this on Twitter, especially like, how do we lose to this team? Guys, FAU is really good. They have 35 wins. I don't care what program you are. You win 35 games in 38 tries. You're really good. Really, really good.
And then the advanced numbers like them a lot, too. They're 17th in the Ken Palm, which does not befit a number 9 overall seed. Like, this is a genuinely good team. This is a team, for comparison's sake, Kansas State went into Saturday's game 20th in the Ken Palm. They've since dropped to 21st. It's a, fluctuating metric. But like, you're essentially talking about a team, even though they come from Conference USA, that was on pretty level pegging with Kansas State as far as what they had accomplished this year, what the stats, what the advanced numbers said that this team was. And even some of those numbers would have projected what we ended up getting, which was a close Florida Atlantic victory. I don't believe, though, that that's any kind of solace because, look, in 2010, Butler was probably better than that Kansas State team. They had 2 NBA guys. K-State team had 2 NBA guys, but Rodney McGruder was a freshman who didn't make much of an impact, and Jacob Pullen didn't have much of an NBA career. Certainly not to the level of Shelvin Mack and Gordon Hayward. That was a really, really good Butler team. 2018, you don't have Dean Wade for that Elite 8 game, and that Loyola team ranked
really
higher.
Good.
Yeah, ranked higher than K-State in the Ken Palm. So, like, again, not really an upset to lose to that team. No shame to be found. It's the same thing here. Aaron, no shame in losing to a team that's 35-3 that has the kind of ability that Florida Atlantic does. It doesn't make it any less painful to be that close to something that hasn't happened since 1964. Man, ain't no color photos of a Kansas State Final Four team. Like, the banners look nice, and that history matters. But, man, a chance to write a new chapter, an unexpected and inspiring chapter. And it was right there. And then Kansas State just started to stumble on offense. What we talked about after the game, when we did a reaction video, instant post-game reaction, it's up on our YouTube page or where you watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@sportson580, the Sports on 580 WWW YouTube. And the X's and O's, like the short form X's and O's explanation is Kansas State couldn't get the matchup they were looking for in the ball screens. Yeah. They kept trying to switch to where the big fella, Golden, was going to have to come out and guard Noel and free up the paint a little bit. And that just never happened. Like, Florida Atlantic fought through the ball screens and just blew up what Kansas State wanted to do on offense. They blew up plan A. Plan B for Kansas State has always been, well, Marquise, make a shot. Or, hey, Keontae, make a shot. Look, that's plan B for a lot of teams with All-Americans. Is sometimes your All-Americans got to bail you out. But part of the problem is, for a good chunk of that 6-minute stretch, one of those All-Americans, the one who had a matchup that you didn't have to screen him off of for it to be a good matchup, was not on the floor. There will always be, when you are a fan of a team that loses a game of this magnitude, that falls short of an accomplishment of the magnitude of reaching a Final Four, there's always going to be that one what if, and there is no question in my mind that the what if 5, 10, 25, 50 years from now, for people who remember the 2023 regional final between Kansas State and Florida Atlantic, will be, what if Keontae Johnson had been in foul trouble? What if Keontae Johnson had played more than 18 minutes? Because that had such a significant impact on Kansas State's offense. It impacted Johnson's ability to make an impact on the game. And ultimately, I feel like if Johnson doesn't pick up the second and the third fouls that he picked up, which were fouls, but were hard luck fouls.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like, oh, brain dead, he's out of position, he swiped somebody across the arm. One of them, it was a bad pass. He went down to try and retrieve it, and he ran smack into a defender he probably didn't see. That was kind of a tough call, but I understand why it got called. The third foul, he's diving for a loose ball, and he's just a split second late too, and he collides with an FAU player who beat him to the spot. Yeah. Hard luck, but you got to call that foul.
Right.
But if those fouls don't happen and Keontae Johnson can play 35, 36 minutes like he usually does instead of literally half that, man, it just feels like it could have been a very different basketball game.
I mean, in a one-score game, what if he plays 25 minutes? Like, even if he ends up short of his season average by quite a bit, 7 more minutes of him on the floor maybe makes an entire difference in the game. And, it's easy to do the hindsight stuff now. Hindsight's 2020, as they say. And, yeah, if you would have had Keontae Johnson out there for even a couple more minutes, maybe you end up winning that game. If K-State knew what it was supposed to be running on the last play of the game, maybe that changes. Because, and I know the guys heard from Jerome Tang during Mic'd Up today, but, Marquise Noel thought the final play was going in one direction. Jerome Tang wanted it to go in a different direction. Ish Massoud is caught in the crossfire, like, what do? I'm being told two different things by the two people I'm supposed to be listening to. He gets put in a no-win situation. And again, credit to FAU, because their defense on that final possession, spread the floor, get as many bodies to the ball as you can to not allow a clean shot. I mean, they played that really well. But you end up at the end of the game 2 times in a row where you had a chance to, down by 3 to tie the game. Last time you never even got a shot off. The first time you went for the quick 2, which in that situation, I get doing it. But again, in hindsight, you need so many things to go right if you do that. Now, granted, you miss that 3, FAU goes down and makes a shot or gets 2 free throws, well, game's over anyway. So you're in a bad spot regardless.
You're extending the game, and that's why there are so many people who advocate for it, most famously Steve Lapis. Like, I almost would call it the Steve Lapis play at this point, the quick 2 when you're down by 3 late in the game. I understand why it has its advocates, because it does. It extends the game. It keeps you in the game. It opens the door. If they miss, if a team's in the single bonus and they miss the front end, then it's a 1-point game. If they miss 1 of 2, then it's a 2-point game. But if they make them both, and I mean, they are free throws, and the odds are generally pretty good that a shooter will make 2 out of 2, particularly when a team can decide who they want to get the ball to, then in that case, you're down by 3, you've compressed the time, and you've brought the foul before the 3-pointer scenario into play in a way that it wouldn't be otherwise. So, yeah, it has its advocates. It has its detractors. I didn't mind trying it once. They probably should have gone faster if they were going to do it. Give yourself 12 seconds instead of 8. But
I just feel like you need to be on the same page in those final 30 seconds. And I'm not a coach for a reason. I understand that. But, like, the call has to be Marquise, you're shooting this, right? Like, I know.
Yeah, you live and die with that because he's your guy, right? Like, if Marquise Noel takes a 40-foot logo 3-pointer and he misses it and Kansas State loses, is anybody mad at Marquise Noel for taking that shot? No.
Because those shots are what got you here.
Yes, exactly right. He made those all season long. You live with one more with a chance to take the game to overtime on the line. You absolutely are okay with that. You're more okay with that than you are with Ish Massoud taking one off the right wing. Look, I know Ish just made some big shots. He made a big shot against Michigan State. Obviously had the big one to beat Baylor earlier this year. I'm not saying Ish isn't a good shooter, but like, if it's do or die, literally your season is on the line here, I will take my All-American, my first team All-Conference player doing whatever he's got to do to get the ball towards the rim. Just get it up there. If it goes in, great. If it doesn't, man, at least I die with my boots on. You know what I mean?
Right. It just sucks to go out that way, to not even get a heave up. And again, it's partially because of the defense from FAU. It's partially because sometimes that just happens in basketball. You just end up with a bad possession. It just sucks that is the time. The one thing that I cannot get over, though, like at the end of the game, I can at least reconcile Massoud has been hot. Noel often is, he's thinking to assist and facilitate. It's not always just let me play superhero. I can at least rationalize some of this stuff. Man, they got out-rebounded 44-22. And I know Vlad Golden is a 7-footer, and I know he played really, really well. You cannot get doubled up in rebounding in an Elite Eight game. It just cannot happen. And offensive boards, look, some teams are just really good at crashing the offensive glass. I get it. FAU was incredible there. You can't get doubled up in rebounds, man.
Especially those last two in the final 2 minutes. And it looked like Kansas State was just slow to those balls.
Yep.
Slow to react to those in a way that Florida Atlantic was not. And those are the ones that'll crush you. I mean, look, we knew all season long that Kansas State wasn't a particularly good rebounding team. And exacerbating the problem is your best rebounder in those spots is not in the game because he's fouled out. Like, those are big problems. But it did sort of feel like, and I referred to it on our reaction video on Saturday night, there's a adage in screenwriting, Chekhov's gun, where if it's a narrative principle, I'm reading from the Wikipedia definition here, a narrative principle that states that every element in a story must be necessary. So the idea is, if you feature a gun, somebody better fire it, right? Like, if it's there for a purpose.
Right.
If it's included for a purpose in the narrative. And Kansas State's rebounding woes were a part of the way we talked about their path through this tournament, right? We talked about it going into the Kentucky game. Oh boy, that's a tough matchup. They got to go. Oscar Tshiebwe, he might have 30 rebounds. He had 18. He had a monster game. But boy, rebounding could really haunt them in this game against Kentucky. Well, they did get crushed on the boards, and they won anyway. Man, Michigan State, really good rebounding team. They could get crushed on the boards in this game. Well, they hung tough on the glass in the Michigan State game, and they won that game. The Florida Atlantic game was the one where that particular Achilles heel really did bite them, and it wasn't entirely the fault of any one guy or any group of players. It certainly hurt not to have your best rebounder on the floor in the final 2 minutes. But yeah, that's the one stat that I'm sure that, like, even a week from now, Jerome Tang is going to be sitting in his office and think, God, we got out rebounded by 22. And it's going to inform, I'm sure, how practices go, how summer conditioning goes, how recruiting and hitting the transfer portal goes, because I remember the determination and the tone of Jerome Tang's voice after they lost in the first round of the Big 12 tournament to TCU, where he said, we got out toughed, essentially. And he said, and I'll never forget the way he said, that will not happen again. And I can almost promise that we are not going to see a Jerome Tang Kansas State team get out rebounded by 22 in an NCAA tournament game ever again.
Kind of Brett Veachey, right? Like, oh, we've got this issue. Let's throw all of our resources into making sure that does not happen.
This is never going to be the reason we lose like this again.
I always say this when KU gets knocked out, that I said it when KU lost to Arkansas, that one of my least favorite parts, or one of the worst parts about your team getting knocked out of the NCAA tournament, when you really live and die with them and follow them, and you develop this, this kind of care for the players that you really don't develop in a lot of sports. Professionally, it's a lot of one-year deals, guys who transfer in and out. Sometimes it's hard to create that connection. I think a lot of fans feel that. But I think K-State fans really attached themselves to this K-State team a lot. Great personalities. Obviously, they were phenomenal on the court. It's the first year under this new regime. And even though Keontae Johnson was only there for a year, you'll always look back and say he was clearly a major, important part of turning this hopefully turning it around long term, but specifically this turnaround. Noel, it's 2 years. He's one of the guys who stayed. He had an All-American caliber season. They didn't even win the region in the NCAA tournament, and he was most outstanding player of the region. That's hard to do.
You look at the other guys who've managed that in the history of the NCAA tournament, it's some cold ballers. It's Steph Curry. It's Chuck Person, the rifleman. It's Mark Macon, who was a lottery pick out of Temple. It's dudes who do that, who shine so brightly that they are undeniable even in defeat.
And it's just hard to watch that way, that be the end of the career. Because we always talk about the NCAA tournament in terms of either championships or Final Fours when you're at, the major, high major level. Like, if you're FAU and you made it just to the Sweet 16 and got bounced, hell yeah, we made a Sweet 16. That's incredible. That's amazing. But when you're in the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, whatever, you're talking about Final Fours and you're talking about titles. And to come up a game shy of getting to that threshold, that sucks and that's painful, because you remember more those Final Four teams than maybe you do an Elite Eight team. Although it's been a while for K-State, maybe I'm a little off base there. And it just sucks, even as a non-fan, but someone who likes those guys and liked this team and all that, to say, man, that's the last time we're going to see Marquise Noel for K-State. That's the last time we're going to see Keontae Johnson or Desi Sills was a one-year guy, but a guy who a lot of people glommed onto really quickly because of his personality and the way he played. I feel it for you if you're a K-State fan and you say, damn, I'm going to miss those guys. I already miss those guys, maybe.
Yeah, I am bummed that we don't get to watch them play at least one more game. Like from the standpoint of, it was really fun to be along for the ride, even in just the way that we watch them every night and, getting the chance as I did to go see him at Bramlage Coliseum about a dozen times this year. It's a bummer not to get to see them play, but college basketball is one of the very few sports we have left where it's not all about the big shiny ring, and
yes.
that there are accomplishments that can be celebrated,
yes.
mileposts that can be celebrated along the way. Rings culture has become to dominate like every other sport we talk about, where if you didn't win the big prize at the end, if you didn't come out at the end in the tournament, then what kind of season did you really have?
I think it's become a major detriment to college football.
I do too. I absolutely agree with you. But to go from pick 10th in the Big 12 with a team full of guys who essentially met each other last summer, to make an Elite Eight and to make Kansas State basketball cool, to make Kansas State basketball the story of the tournament, where people are imitating them and imitating their pregame routine, where the best team in women's college basketball is imitating Kansas State's pregame routine. Imitation, the serious most it's the what is it, the most something form of flattery, the sincerest form. It was an S, the most sincerest form of flattery. No, I think that's all huge. I think that all matters for what Kansas State became this year, what it now feels like it can be. 2010 was a great Kansas State basketball season. 2018 was a nice surprise for that team to make the tournament run that they did. But in a very different way, I think what this team accomplished in 2023 feels like the beginning of something, more than the culmination of something. The culmination, even though there were a bunch of seniors on this team, this feels like the beginning of what Kansas State basketball can be, of what Jerome Tang can build, of what is possible at Kansas State. And I think that if that's the lasting legacy of Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson and Desi Sills and all of these guys, then that's a pretty cool one to leave, whether or not they made it to Houston.
Yeah, I genuinely hope it is too. I think all K-State fans certainly feel that way as well. We've got to get to our first break here on 580 Sports Talk. We've got Matt Verderame coming up a little bit later on this hour, and we'll recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly next here on 580 WIBW. Time for a real quick recap of the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. Real quick, we've got a comment in from our guy Mark in the YouTube comment section who I think sums up the thoughts on K-State's future pretty well. K-State had a good year, almost great, but the right coach is there. The future's bright. A little bummed, but not super disappointed in it. I think a lot of K-State fans feel that way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think that the sadness that you would feel after a loss like that and a missed opportunity was pretty quickly replaced, at least on my Twitter timeline, was pretty quickly replaced by gratitude and appreciation for what this team was and what they gave Kansas State fans this year.
Yeah, it was a heck of a year. All right, good, bad, and ugly. My good, Caitlin Clark is incredible. She had the first ever 40-point NCAA tournament triple-double last night for the Iowa women in a pretty impressive win over a really good Louisville team. Her last rebound, a little bit iffy, but I'm glad they gave it to her because people will remember a 40-point triple-double more than they'll remember 49 and 11. So she's amazing. Iowa's really darn good. They will probably play South Carolina in the Final Four. That'll be awesome. Probably your top two contenders for National Player of the Year.
My good for the weekend. Succession's back. Final season of the best show on television. Succession. Season premiere last night was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
I know my wife's excited about it.
It was really, really funny. It was really, really good. Very fired up for the Disgusting Brothers.
All right. My bad. We pride ourselves on not doing the hot take thing. And I promise I mean this earnestly. I'm not trying to rile anyone up, but this is definitely an unpopular opinion. I don't like that Jerome Tang went into FAU's locker room. I do not think this was ill-intended. In fact, knowing what I know about Jerome Tang, I think his heart was 100% in the right place. It's their moment, though. We live in an era where social media videos get around instantly. Say something nice about Dusty May in the players post-game. He'll probably tweet about you. Their team will probably say, wow, thanks for the support. Great game, everyone. Your message can get there. Talk to them after the locker room celebration. I only think it's fair to say this, as much as I like Jerome Tang, I didn't like when Scott Drew did it, or does it. I don't like when Coach K did it. It's their moment. You can tell them how good they are later. And they know they're good because they just beat you. So I think his heart was in the right place, but let them have their moment.
No, I think that's entirely fair. Like you said, I think it's important to note that Jerome Tang, I don't believe, and you mentioned Scott Drew, obviously, who he worked with for many, many years. I think that the desire to congratulate your opponent and encourage your opponent is 100% authentic, because I don't think there's an inauthentic bone in Jerome Tang's body.
Certainly not.
I think that was legit. I think he wasn't thinking about the cameras or anybody catching that on film. He's not doing it for that purpose. He's doing it because he admires what that team did to his, and he wants to wish him well and encourage him moving forward. I have no problem with that. At the same time, I think that the attitude in the FAU locker room was probably, why is this guy in here?
Probably not quite as extreme as the time Svi did not know who Scott Drew was, which is one of the funniest KU moments of all time.
Who is that guy?
Who's that guy?
Yeah, in Tulsa. That is an all-timer.
All-time moment.
I'm with you. I think that, if you want to tell him, if you want to tell those guys, wish them luck, and the time to do that is in the post-game handshake line, and you let them have their moment in the locker room.
I would say classy, but I think misguided. That's how I would put it. So not bad, but again, heart in the right place. I just let them have their moment.
No, my bad is 44-22 on the glass. Oh, man, just one more. If they get one of those rebounds in the final 2 minutes, I think they win the game. I really do.
The ugly for me was the end of San Diego State Creighton, not because it was necessarily wrongly officiated. It was a foul and they had to fix the clock at the end. They didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but that game was so fun, low scoring, but so much fun. And it ended in the most anticlimactic way possible. Officiating.
My ugly, we don't have to lie about, we're going to talk a lot more about the regional finals. So we're going to talk about this a lot more in the 4:00 hour and kind of look ahead to what's going to happen in Houston this coming weekend. But you don't have to lie and say you're excited for this Final Four if you don't want to. If this is a juiceless Final Four. There are no stars. The best program there is like a pseudo blue blood with no real superstar players. It's okay if you're not super jazzed for this Final Four. It's okay if you're going to find something else to do Saturday night or Monday night instead of watch these final couple of games.
That's fair. This is a diehard Final Four. If you love like John Rothstein's probably losing his mind over this. Like he can't wait. And like I'm excited, but I can understand if you're not, especially like if you only follow the big conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't care about San Diego State.
Like San Diego State, like I picked them to win. I even made a little money on them beating Creighton on the money line. I am disappointed they beat Creighton from an aesthetic perspective. Creighton is so much more fun to watch play basketball.
Yes.
Like Creighton K-State would have been like a 5-star banger of a basketball game.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to get San Diego State and Florida Atlantic hit each other with hammers for 40 minutes.
We've got to get to a quick break. Matt Verderame joins us next on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with your money.
Matt Verderame covers the NFL for Sports Illustrated, and he joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things NFL. Head over to Twitter where you can follow him at Matt Verderame, and of course, go check out his work at Sports Illustrated. Matt, the biggest story of the day in the NFL, Lamar Jackson has officially asked the Baltimore Ravens for a trade. First things first, are you surprised that it finally got to this point where he's actually requesting a trade?
No, I'm not. Because this whole thing has been combative now for 2 years. So they're clearly not going to give him the contract he wants. I mean, that's not happening. There's no way they're doing that, especially now. He's had 2 straight years where he's had major injuries at the end of the year that have held him out of the last month and a half seasons. They're not going to offer him a fully guaranteed contract or anything close to it. They're just not going to do that. And so I think for Lamar, this is probably the thing that you kind of knew was coming. At some point, he was going to put his feet in the ground and either say, trade me, or I'm not coming to camp, and I'm not playing, and I'm not playing on the tag, and you figure it out. But make no mistake, Baltimore holds all the cards here. The Ravens still have control on Lamar with the tag. They could still match any offer, and if they match it and he signs an offer sheet, he's with the Ravens on that contract. So he can want to trade all he wants, but the Ravens still have the trump card, if you will.
I was going to say that's the follow-up, and I think maybe the more important question of the two here, do you think the Ravens will actually be inclined to move him? And what do you think it would take to even, start the discussion? I know if he signs the tag, then, you can get 2 first-round picks for him because it's the non-exclusive tag, or maybe it was exclusive. I got it backwards. But either way, you could theoretically get 2 firsts. I mean, is that where the trade discussions begin, with 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, I think at a bare minimum, because then you're getting into, look at last year. Russell Wilson, who is significantly older, who has never been an MVP, although has been a Super Bowl champion, been 2 Super Bowls, fair enough. First, 2 seconds, 3 players, and then a swap of day 3 picks, memory serves. So that's what you're talking about. Now, the reality for Baltimore is, he's on this non-exclusive tag. If a team calls them up and wants the deal, I think that team would absolutely say, look, we can just sign him to a contract and get the player we want for those 2 firsts and move on. But the Ravens could turn around and say, that's nice, we'll match it. So the weird part about all of this, and it all comes back to this whole contract impasse. If Lamar Jackson is going to get traded, one would strongly think he's going to have to agree to a new contract with a new team. Well, if nobody out there is willing to give him the contract that he wants, why is he getting traded? I mean, unless it is just literally, I don't want to be here anymore, I feel disrespected, I'll go somewhere for a standard, traditional type contract, think 5 and $250 with $160 million guarantee, something like that. Unless he just wants out of Baltimore and he's ready to burn that bridge. If there's not a team out there that's willing to give him the deal he wants, what is the point in all this? And I think that's if I'm Baltimore, I am just going to sit there and continuously say to him, you are not getting the deal you want. You're not getting it from us. You're not getting it from the other 31 clubs in the league. Every day that goes by proves that. Now, if you're Lamar, you can sit there and say, I'm going to wait till after the draft. And then everybody and their mother can get involved because then everybody's got 2 firsts going forward. And maybe it's the Colts, maybe it's Miami, so on and so forth. But if I'm the Ravens, I'm absolutely playing that card and saying that's nice. And if one of those teams offers you the contract, then go with God. But if that doesn't come in, we're fine sitting here playing that game of chicken because you're going to give up $2 million a game this year. Have fun.
Our guest is Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated, covers the National Football League for SI, and he joins us Mondays here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, which team or teams should be the most aggressive in pursuing a trade and being willing to perhaps shell out the contract that Lamar Jackson wants to make him their quarterback?
So I think Indianapolis makes a ton of sense. Okay, now if I'm Indy, I'm waiting to do it after the draft because I don't want to give you the number 4 overall pick. I'd rather use that pick, and then I would rather trade you a couple of firsts that are impacted by having Lamar Jackson on my team. So that's number 1. Now, if I'm Baltimore, I obviously want to do it before the draft because then I could take Anthony Richardson, let's say, and I can kind of restart the clock and all that. But Indy makes a ton of sense. I have said from jump for the last 6 months, I think Atlanta makes a ton of sense for Lamar. If you put Lamar Jackson in Atlanta with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Arthur Smith, and a revamped defense, that team is good right now. They're not winning the Super Bowl, but in that division, they're absolutely the favorites. And in the NFC, where would you rank Lamar Jackson in the NFC among quarterbacks? 1, 2? I mean, he's up there, especially if you take Aaron Rodgers out. So I think they make a lot of sense. A lot of people have linked them to Washington. I know my colleague over at SI, Connor Orr, put out a list. 5 teams that make the most sense. Washington's on that list. I agree. Now, if you're the Ravens, are you willing to trade him down the Beltway? I mean, that is do you want to sit there all day long if you're the Ravens and see billboards of Lamar Jackson in Burgundy? I don't know. I don't know that you're willing to do that. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But again, I just think if you look at this, unless a team breaks from what we've seen to this point and says, yep, we'll give him full boat, $200 to $250 million guaranteed. I just think this is really tough for him. And again, and I know, I've said it here, I've said it everywhere, him not having an agent is a major, major problem for him. And it's not getting any smaller. And I think that's where we sit right now.
Pivoting to other players who might be on the trade market, there is interest in Arizona receiver DeAndre Hopkins, and Arizona may have to lower their asking price, it sounds like, a little bit after some other veteran wide receivers have gone for much less on the trade market. Now, DeAndre Hopkins is a better player than Brandon Cooks, but still doesn't look like the first round pick that, or even the second round pick that Arizona was hoping for in a trade is going to be the jumping off point for those negotiations. How likely do you think it is that Hopkins gets moved, and what do you suspect compensation might end up looking like in the end?
Oh, I think he's going to get traded. I mean, I never like to say 100% in the NFL on anything 90 plus. I mean, I think, look, if you're the Cardinals, I think they're probably the worst team in the NFL next year. They don't have Murray for half the season at minimum. They have a brand new coaching staff. None of them have ever been in the position they're currently in. That roster is a mess. If you are Monty Ossenfort's first year GM there, you're fine with just stripping this thing down to the studs. And Hopkins is a plus 30 player who you can get something of value for. Look, I think he's probably going to end up going for a third to fourth round value. Now that can always be massaged as, okay, give us a third and we'll throw in a sixth and something like that. But I think in the end, that's about where he's going. You know, we've seen the reports. Well, the Cardinals want a Christian McCaffrey type return. Well, look, I like to be driving around in a Porsche, but that's not going to happen. Okay, they're not getting a Christian McCaffrey return. Christian McCaffrey is a tremendous do-it-all player who's in his mid-20s. I get he's got injury concerns, but so does Hopkins. After the last 2 years, once because of injury, once because of suspension, he has not played a ton of games. So the reality is, and here's the other part I should say before I move on. What are you going to do with his contract? Because it's 2 and 34 right now, which teams would be fine with. But if he wants more money packed into it, now that lowers the price. There's no question about that. So I think, look, eventually he's going to get dealt. He's too talented not to get dealt. And for the Cardinals, it makes no sense not to trade him, even if you get something lower than what you want. But I think a lot of it is the contract, his age, last 2 years not being out in the field for the full season. I think all those things are factors.
Last couple of questions for Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk. Joins us every Monday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, to talk all things National Football League. Go check out SI for all of Matt's great work covering the NFL, and head over to Twitter to follow him as well, at Matt Verderame. Matt, were you at all surprised today by some of the comments from John Lynch about Brock Purdy being the future starting quarterback of the 49ers?
A little, but that is probably the weirdest storyline in the sense of, I think if everything was equal and both guys were healthy, right? It's Purdy and it's Lance. That would be the battle to watch this entire offseason, certainly this summer. But Purdy's not healthy. So Trey Lance has the stage to himself. If Lance goes out there, and let's say Purdy misses the first month of the year. If Lance goes out and he plays really well, not even great, but he just plays really well, flashes, they're 3-1, they're 4-1. Purdy now comes back and he's healthy. You're taking Trey Lance off the field? I mean, you gave up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. You're taking him off the field now? If I'm Lynch or anybody in the Niners organization, I'm just saying, look, we're going to give both guys the best opportunity we can to compete for the job. We're going to see how things land, and that's it. And I think if you're the Niners, that's the route to go. Because if you start pigeonholing yourself one way or the other, it puts you in a bad spot. I think San Francisco ultimately is going to get a great look at Lance here over the next, whatever it is, 5 months. And then they're going to have to make a decision here at some point down the line.
If you had to guess right now, where do you think Trey Lance, well, I want to make sure I'm phrasing this delicately, because I think Trey Lance could be a good player, and maybe he does end up winning some sort of competition here. Long term, if you had to prognosticate right now, who do you think would be the long-term preferred option for San Francisco? Is it Lance with all that untapped athleticism, or is it Purdy, who, frankly, has already won more than Lance?
I mean, the preferred option, I think they'd love it if Lance went out there and played, like Jalen Hurts did this year. The reality is he's had very little opportunity to prove himself. He got hurt, week 2 of last year, was out for the season. I think Purdy is kind of, as John Lynch talked about, I think gives you inside track. I mean, Purdy went out, and when you watch those games, Brock Purdy didn't do anything that you were just blown away by in terms of his skill set, but he wins. And he was winning playoff games, and who knows what would have happened in the NFC title game if he doesn't get hurt. Maybe they lose, maybe they get blown out, but maybe they win. I think in the end, Purdy's going to be the starter, but I also think there's a lot of twists and turns with that thing that could take it any direction.
Last thing I've got for you, Matt, over at Sports Illustrated, I believe it was on Friday, you had a story go up about the 5 worst free agent signings this year, and I suggest everyone go check it out because it's a great read. Your number 1 pick, Jimmy Garoppolo. The more and more I think about that move, I agree with you because what are the Raiders doing? Dan and I are both in agreement with you. The Cardinals look like the worst team in the NFL right now. What are the Raiders trying to do? Is this a rebuild? Are they trying to win? Are they trying to go 1-1-15 this year? What is the goal
is
of
Josh
what that team is
McDaniels
trying to
putting
do?
together like a just vibing with his boys?
They feel like a Ponzi scheme.
Well, so I first of all, yes, I agree on all counts. Secondly, I also wrote an additional column to that the day they agreed to terms with Garoppolo about McDaniels and this fetish that everybody who comes out of New England seems to have, which is if you go and look, it's almost comical. Like Patricia, McDaniels, I think Flores was the other example I used. Those guys just scoop up every single person that's ever played in New England. And it just becomes like, this is who we are. We're New England West. We're New England South. We're New England Midwest. They have no ability to just go out and bring in their own guys who don't have these major ties to New England. I looked at that signing of Garoppolo, and I think I noted in the piece, I'm not even upset about the contract. Contracts, whatever. My problem is with what it says. It just says, yep, we're completely fine being mediocre because we have absolutely no shot at competing with Kansas City or LA. Garoppolo's he's played 9 NFL seasons. Only twice has he ever started more than 10 games in 9 seasons. The odds are he's going to get hurt at some point in this time because that's been his track record. And it's what? So you brought in him and Jacoby Myers. Why? What is the common thread? Because they're both out of New England. That's the only reason, in my opinion, that they're with the Raiders. And then on top of that, which factored into this is the worst signing I think in the offseason, Jimmy Garoppolo, statistically speaking, is not good outside the numbers, and he's just non-existent throwing the ball down the field. So what do you need? You need a tight end. Great. We have Darren Waller. No, we don't anymore. We traded him for a 3rd-round pick. I don't understand it. You have the defense. You think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get into 35, 34 shootouts with Mahomes? Have fun. Good luck with that.
Matt Verderame covers the whole NFL for Sports Illustrated. Go find him on Twitter as well, at Matt Verderame. He joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things National Football League. Great stuff as always, Matt. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
That is Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. I always say this. I'm glad when our guests and our friends who are, so smart about the leagues they cover agree with us on things and agree with me on things. And the Raiders are a Ponzi scheme, pretty much. They're just New England Part 2, except so much worse.
Except without the 2 things that make it work in New England, Belichick and Brady.
We're going to preview the Royals position players coming up to lead off the 4 o'clock hour right here on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, just getting started with the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thanks so much for swinging by and being a part of the show as we open up opening day week here on 580 Sports Talk. We've got Royals baseball coming up on Thursday this week.
Yeah, we do.
That's exciting. Baseball is here. Springtime is here.
The only sport that matters.
I said earlier I would not say anything mean. I will not comment on you wearing a Rockies hat as you say that about baseball.
Hey, man, that's how bulletproof baseball is. The fact that I root for just bottom of the barrel pond scum of a baseball team run by the dumbest boy alive is the owner, and I still love baseball this much.
We were earlier today, Dan and Fulton were doing this first, and I joined in late, but they were doing the Sporkle quiz. If you've ever been to sporkle.com, it's just all these timed quizzes. It's, can you name all 14 SEC mascots in 2 minutes? Can you name all 151 original Pokemon? It's all just timed quizzes or whatever. Fulton and Dan were both doing name all of the Rockies and Royals starting pitchers, opening day starting pitchers from all time.
Yeah.
So then I pulled up the Cubs one. I was like, you guys, you expansion team fans. My favorite team has sucked forever. It goes back to the 1870s.
Yes, the better part of a century plus.
We've sucked for most of that time. Been absolute garbage. Got 8 championships, and 7 of them came before bread was sliced and sold in stores. Okay. So I can understand the misery, but my team has won a title in the last decade, so I can't complain too much.
So has Fulton's team. So has
True.
the Royals.
True.
We're still waiting.
Hey, we're going to talk about those Royals. We're going to talk about the fun part of the Royals roster coming up here in just a matter of moments. We're going to do over the next 3 days as we get ready for opening day on Thursday. We are going to do our Royals season preview series, if you will. We're just going to go by position group today and tomorrow. We're going to do position players today. Tomorrow, we're going to do pitchers. And as I said earlier, it was intentional that I started with position players because I wanted to start the week on a high note because that's the fun part of this Royals roster. Ooh, you've got guys who could be stars. You've got a guy who's already a star in Salvi. You've got a couple of guys who are kind of unknowns but are interesting. The Nate Eatons and Michael Masseys of the world. There could be something there. The pitching is probably going to be gross. So that's why we're starting with position players coming up here in just a matter of moments. Also, this hour, we will talk about the Final Four. I think it's intriguing. I think it is interesting. I am very excited for it. But as Dan said earlier, there's maybe reason why you wouldn't be so excited for it. The brand names, not really there. We'll discuss that coming up a little bit later on in the hour. And, of course, we'll get to today's What Is Wrong With You. It's all coming up in this 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. We would love to take your thoughts about anything Royals, Final Four, anything else we're talking about. You can jump into the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. Or you can hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. Let's get into it. Kansas City Royals, the position players. This is where the most intrigue is with this team because your hopefully new core of a contending team pretty much exists exclusively in the position player group. I guess if you want to throw Brady Singer in there, sure. But really, we're talking about Bobby Witt. We're talking about MJ Melendez. We're talking about Vinny Pasquantino, among others. Salvi is established. We'll get to some of the other newer guys in a few moments, some of the other new young guys specifically. But the first question I have, and I think this is really the biggest question that needs to be monitored all year for this Royals team in terms of figuring out what the future is going to look like. What are reasonable expectations for that new core in year 2? And I'm specifically referencing Witt, Pasquantino, and Melendez because it feels like those 3 are the biggest bats that the Royals are relying on to be contributors immediately. So based on what they did last year in varying sample sizes, and given what we expect and have always projected them to be at the major league level, what is a fair assumption for what those guys can be this year? And I guess we should start with Bob Witt because he is the crown jewel of the whole group.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I wish it had been intended.
So I think the exciting things with regards to all 3 of those guys is they came up to the major leagues and did the things that you would expect them to do based on their minor league track records. They didn't take Major League Baseball by storm. I thought Bobby Witt Jr. would maybe win Rookie of the Year. That didn't quite happen. But we knew that Bobby Witt Jr. had crazy tools and the ability to hit for power and the ability to run. And he had a remarkable power speed combo season for a rookie. It's really rare for a young player in their first season to go out and hit 20 dingers and steal 30 bases. Like, that is a rare combination of speed and power for a 22-year-old shortstop. Struck out a lot, didn't walk a whole bunch. That was obviously going to be something that was a bit of a concern in his game, but he runs well enough and he's got the power. He hits the ball hard. You feel like there is more success in his future. There's a level up for him to go as he learns the strike zone and learns what he can and can't hit. Because I don't think there are some hitters where they're bad ball swingers, like Salvador Perez. When he came up, he's a bad ball hitter. Like, he'll hit a bad pitch. So you were never figuring that Salvador Perez was all of a sudden going to be a guy who was walking 60 times a season. Like, you're going to draw a walk a week and have a shiny on base percentage. Like, you knew that wasn't going to be Salvi Perez. And here we are, 10 years on, and that has never been Salvador Perez. Bobby Witt Jr., I think, has the potential to grow into some discipline. That's the biggest thing that's missing for him. If he can turn a couple of those struck out 135 times last year, turn a couple of those into walks. And if he can, I really do, like, a couple of walks a week for him, an extra walk a week for him, jump that on-base percentage up over the 300 mark. The power is going to play. The speed is going to play. He's going to be above average offensive player. MJ Melendez has, I think, better understanding of the strike zone.
Yeah.
What he can't hit, what he ought to leave alone. He drew 66 walks in 534 plate appearances last year.
It looked from the very beginning with MJ like he was really kind of the prototype for what the viewers, the fans, and especially, some maybe less trained baseball eyes would say, that looks like a professional hitter. Like, knows what the zone looks like, knows what pitches are going to throw to him. It just felt like he had a really high-level grasp of that for a young player.
Power potential still very much there. 18 dingers in his rookie year playing at Kauffman Stadium. That's nothing to shake a stick at. He was right around league average in most metrics offensively. The big question for him is he's got to make more contact. With Bobby Witt Jr., it's about, like, the pitches that he's swinging at, like making sure that he's swinging at better pitches. For MJ Melendez, it's about making sure that the pitches you swing at, you hit. Like, making a little more contact, swinging through fewer strikes, I think is going to be valuable for Melendez. And then Vinny Pasquantino, he's the genuine article as an offensive player. Like, I think that he's going to be the best hitter on the Royals for, like, the next decade. Like, he's going to be a guy that you plug in the 3-hole and he's going to hit, like, I think he's going to hit 300. I think he's going to hit. Yeah, I think he's a 300 hitter, especially now that the shift is gone, and that should be good for an extra knock through that hole between first base and the second baseman. I think he's going to be a 300 hitter this year, and I would not be surprised if he pairs that with something along the lines of 20 to 25 home runs. That's an all-star. Even as a DH, that's an all-star. So I think that's the ceiling for all three of those guys. Pasquantino's is the bat I am most certain of because he has exhibited both the patience, the understanding of the strike zone, and the ability to make contact within the strike zone that are eluding or are still works in progress for Bobby Witt Jr. and MJ Melendez. I am bearish on all three, or bullish rather, on all three guys. I am absolutely buying stock if you're selling it to me. But if there's one that I think we might see in the Midsummer Classic in Seattle this year, my money be on Vinny P.
Over Bobby Witt.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think, because I've got some projections here from Fangraphs we'll get to in a second, but what do you think it takes next for Bobby Witt to get to that same level that you think Vinny Pasquantino could, in an ideal situation, get to this year? What does it take for Bobby Witt to get to that point? And not that I'm, if any Royal played well enough to be a shoe-in for the Midsummer Classic like that, I'd feel great. Okay, awesome. This guy has arrived or is arriving. But I think Witt is the most household name of that group. He was the highest regarded prospect of that group. What does it take for him to get to that same point?
Again, I just think it's the maturity of understanding and controlling your strike zone, what you can hit, what you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2013, there was a rookie third baseman who came up, and in 133 games in his rookie year, he only walked 23 times in 514 plate appearances. And he struck out 72 times. So he didn't strike out near as much as Bobby Witt Jr. did, but still pretty wide split between your walks and your strikeouts, and an on-base percentage that sat just above 300. Like you can only be but so valuable if you're making outs more than 70% of the time at the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to do that, you better be a 30 home run guy. Maybe Bobby Witt Jr. is that. But the name of the game is don't make outs. And Bobby Witt Jr. made a few too many outs last year. And a lot of those outs were strikeouts. He's got to cut those down. And that comes from getting yourself into better counts, getting yourself more hittable pitches. Because when he makes contact, he hits it far and he hits it hard. Like at an elite level.
Yes.
His exit velocities are elite. So it's making good contact on hittable pitches, but you have to be able to get yourself in good counts. What happened for that third baseman I mentioned in 2013? He can still be pretty strikeout prone, but the walks started to increase as he became an elite power hitter in the game, from 34 in 2015 to 68 the very next year, and essentially the same number of at bats. And it's held fairly steady in the 60 or the 50 to 70 range in walks. And he's also kind of cut down on the strikeouts as his career's gone on. I'm talking about Nolan Arenado here. And the reason I bring Arenado up is because, similar ages when they debuted, but the idea that plate discipline and getting to your power is the kind of thing that can be learned. That is a skill that can be developed at the major league level. And that's the thing that Bobby Witt Jr. is going to have to learn. That, sometimes you got to spit on that slider outside the strike zone. You got to maybe not be, and it's not just, chasing pitches out of the zone. It's getting yourself beat on a good pitch early in the count too. Learning to let a few strikes go that aren't really good hittable strikes, so that maybe you get one later in the count. Maybe you run the count 2-1, 3-1, and you get something that's a little more hittable. That to me is the maturity of Bobby Witt Jr. as a hitter. And this is a guy, he's all the way professional. I think he can get there. I really do think that there's a ceiling for him, given how he hits the ball, how hard he hits the ball, that is an all-star ceiling.
I do think something to keep an eye on here. The Royals have for so long, because of who is running the team and their just club philosophy, has been winning by doing the little things, kind of the small ball approach. I'm curious with Witt to see what he does on the base paths this year. I've got the Fangraphs Zips projections up for this season for the entire roster. They've got Bobby Witt projected for 150 hits, including 35 doubles, 22 homers, 86 runs batted in, bunch of strikeouts, 134. That would be the third highest on the team.
The strikeout and walk numbers are almost the exact same from last year.
25 steals, 7 times caught stealing. I thought in my head, not knowing for sure, I thought, man, I don't know that raised model, which is what we think the Royals are going to want to replicate going forward. But look who they've hired. The Rays actually the last couple of years have stolen plenty of bases. They've been actually pretty active on the base paths. Last year, they were tied for 11th in steals in the majors. And 2 years back, so 2021, they were tied for 7th in the majors for most steals. So if this is a manager in Matt Quatraro who's willing to say, hey, if we've got guys who can run the bases, let's have them run the bases. And especially with rules now that should indicate base stealing should be at least slightly easier because of the bigger bases.
Bigger bases and the restrictions on pitchers disengaging the rubber too.
I think a 30 steal season is absolutely in the cards for Bobby Witt.
Go bigger.
I almost would hope so.
Go bigger. I think he can be a 40, even a 50 steal guy. It depends on how often he's on base, how they construct the order. Because I don't know. I don't love him running in front of Salvador Perez, but at the same time, maybe help Salvi stay out of some double plays.
That's true.
If you put him in action, and Salvi probably sees more fastballs, which is good for Salvi. Here's the biggest thing that I have with these guys, because Pasquantino looked like the more settled offensive player, because Vinny Pasquantino was set defensively because he was either going to play first base or he was going to DH. MJ Melendez got moved all over the field last year. And when he was behind the plate, like the defensive numbers
Stinky.
To say they are not kind would be an understatement. There are some defensive metrics that suggest he was the worst catcher in baseball last year defensively. Like really, really bad. Like take this guy's gear away from him and give it away to a young fan bad. Like they're going to make him the backup catcher. They're not going to carry Freddie Fermin. So MJ Melendez by default is the backup catcher. And I think that's fine for now, but would it be easier for MJ Melendez to settle in offensively if he were more settled into a defensive home? Bobby Witt Jr. kind of settled into shortstop after the injury to Adalberto Mondesi. Early in last season, he was moving around a little bit. He played some third, he would play some short, and he'd play some more third. But Bobby Witt Jr., by some defensive metrics, was the worst shortstop in baseball last year. And not just that, by default, because shortstop is such an important position, one of the worst defensive players in all of baseball. Now, you watch Bobby Witt Jr. and you think, again, all the tools, the range, the arm. Oh, my God, the arm. He made some plays that'll make your eyes bug out of your head. But he missed a lot of plays, too. There are a lot of plays he didn't make. And so my question for Witt and Melendez, I think they're going to hit. I think it will be easier for them to settle in as offensive players once they've settled in as defensive players. We may still be a year away from that. We may still be a year away from the Royals deciding, you know what? Maybe Michael Garcia is our shortstop of the future, and Bobby Witt Jr. is better served at third base, where the arm will still play, but he doesn't have to cover quite as much ground. Maybe MJ Melendez will settle in when he's getting DH at bats here, and he's getting some corner outfield at bats there, but we put the catching thing to bed because he's not quite major league caliber behind the plate. So that, I think, is going to be very interesting to monitor this year and moving forward with those guys because, I think they're going to be positive contributors with the bat. And how much are they going to take away with their gloves? And the answer for Bobby Witt Jr. was quite a bit he took off the table with his glove last year.
No, I think there is certainly something to consistency for young players and knowing Bobby Witt Jr., you are a third baseman or you are a shortstop or whatever. MJ Melendez, you are a designated hitter. That is your job. You are a DH or you're a right fielder. Whatever it ends up being, I just think having consistency is valuable. And I can pull from my own experience. I remember when the Cubs stopped trying to make Kyle Schwarber catching a thing because that's how he came up. That's what he played in college, all that. They said, no, you are an outfielder and a DH. Like, you're not a catcher.
And it totally makes sense why you would do that, right? Because a bat like Schwarber's as a catcher, you're talking about the best catcher in baseball.
Yes.
And a bat like Melendez, that is extremely valuable if that's your catcher. But it's not as valuable if you're taking that much off the table defensively, if you just can't handle it. And I think we're pretty close to that with Melendez. Not obviously not in the Royals dugout where they're going to make him the backup catcher. I don't know how many times he's going to catch per week. Be fascinated to see that. But, when he's catching, presumably Salvador Perez is DHing, which means presumably Vinny Pasquantino's at first base.
So that brings up the next big question I've got. What is the catching/DHing time split going to look like for Salvador Perez this year? And what, again, it's just an expectations question. How much longer can we expect Salvador Perez to be among the best offensive catchers in baseball, if not the best power hitting catcher in all of baseball? Fangraphs has Salvy's numbers for the year projected at a 267 average with a 292 on base, which is bad, but I mean, we know who Salvy is. Project him for 28 home runs, 84 RBIs. If you can get another 28 home runs out of Salvy, that's phenomenal. That's remarkable. He'll be among the best catchers in baseball again in that regard. Can you trust that, though? Not that Salvy is old, but in catcher years, he's kind of old, and you probably can't have him catch full time. We, last year, midsummer and then later into the summer, too, we looked into the numbers, how well he was hitting as a catcher, and in games when he was a DH, he was hitting better as a DH as the year went on, or really over the course of the year, and it became more obvious as the year went on. So I don't know exactly if we have enough data to prove that there is a decline coming or that he is entering decline or whatever to say, oh, well, he's got one more year of being a great power hitting catcher, or no, we have 5 years. I don't know. I don't know even how you would project that. I don't have models in front of me to do that. But I do know there was obvious evidence that when he didn't have to worry about catching, he was driving in more runs and creating more runs at the plate. So that then again brings into, how do you want to split that up? And do you need to make that clear from the very beginning? Like, hey, Salvy is going to catch 5 of every 7 games, or he is going to catch, 4 in a row, and then it's one. I don't know what the split would look like, but you probably need to figure that out for the sake of the young guys and the sake of maximizing Salvy's bat.
So he's DH'd exactly 40 games in each of the last 2 seasons. And last year, the difference in OPS, on base plus slugging, between Salvador Perez as a catcher and Salvador Perez as a DH was just 12 points. He was 12 points better as a DH than he was as a catcher. But essentially, if you're talking about a 12-point difference over the course of that many at-bats, you're talking about a guy who's pretty much the same hitter.
Okay.
So with Perez, a guy whose 162 game average since 2015 is 34 homers this season, like, you are talking about an elite power hitting catcher. It's somebody who can still get to that power, somebody who last year came back in just a handful of weeks from an injury that we honestly thought might keep him out the rest of the season when it was announced in the middle of the summer. It could be we're just talking about like a physical outlier here, a guy who is really built to withstand the rigors of catching and still contribute in the ways he's contributing offensively. Like you said, we know who he is. He's not going to be a guy who hits much better than 260. He's a career 268 hitter. Like, he's not going to beat out any infield hits, right? Like, he's not going to walk a bunch. He's going to strike out a little more than you'd like, although he really cut his strikeouts last year. He is who he is. And I think that's still a bedrock player as he enters his age 33 season. As far as managing his innings behind the plate, I think that's probably a decision that Perez has as much input in as Matt Quatrero does at this point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it's a few more games at DH as we start moving forward, but they've already given him, 40, that's a quarter of the season and more than a quarter of his games last year because he only played in 114 games. So maybe it is closer to a fifth of his games this year that he ends up. Last year it was 40 of his 114. Quick back of the napkin math, that's like 35% of his games. So yeah, 40% of his games as the DH. That seems about right. And I think that probably keeps him fresh and keeps him a productive part of the middle of the lineup.
So I did the math last night. In the 7 years when Salvy has played a mostly full schedule, so we're talking like 100+ games, throw out the COVID year, throw out the year he missed entirely, obviously, throw out the early seasons when he didn't play more than 80 games. In those 7 seasons, including last year's 114, he plays about 141 games a year. So if you wanted to take that same percentage and say 35% of the games you're going to be a DH out of approximately 141 you'll play, 49 games as DH. Would you take that number? Like, does that sound like a fair number?
Yeah, if it goes up from 40 to 50 this year, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. 50, maybe even 55. And that would be an opportunity for MJ Melendez to get work behind the plate and figure out once for all if he can improve and be an adequate defensive catcher in the league. Early returns are not positive, but the more opportunities he gets, the more he can shed that reputation.
And for the Royals, you just need to know. Like,
yes.
Can we turn him into something suitable defensively, or is this just not going to happen? We have to get to a commercial break here, but I really quickly want to get to this because we really can't ignore this topic. Right now, what's the starting outfield look like?
I think it's MJ in one of the corners.
Okay.
I think it's Edward Olivares in the other corner. So you're not talking about great outfield defense in the corners to start. Like, Melendez is a good athlete, but he's still new to the position. And I think he could be a good outfielder. I do.
Serviceable, at least.
I think if they said, hey, you're our left fielder, you're going to play there 150 times this year, I think by the end of the year, he'd be pretty good.
Okay.
Olivares, I think the tools are there. I just think he's been a bit of an adventure, and maybe that's an unfair perception. But certainly it's not like when you had a Gold Glover in left field, like Benintendi or obviously Alex Gordon before that. Like, it's a little different. But I think those are your corner guys. I think Kyle Isbell's got to be your center fielder. Sounds like Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to make the team, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's got anything left, but certainly, late inning defensive replacement for Eddie O or for MJ. I could get down with that.
Yeah.
Nate Eaton, I think, is a good glove man who sounds like he's going to make the 26. Franmil Reyes sounds like he's going to make the 26. If you play him in the outfield, you've made a mistake, but like, that's your DH.
Yeah.
Particularly against left-handers. You can DH him, and then it's all Vinny all the time at first base. does that squeeze out an opportunity for Nick Pratto later on down the road? If Prado's got to hit his way back to the major leagues, that's a problem he's got to solve. So I think that's what it looks like, though, to start. And then Drew Waters ends up your center fielder unless Isbell's hitting well enough to keep him out of the lineup.
Is that the most intriguing position battle, specifically center field? Because everything else feels so malleable.
It was before Waters got hurt.
Yeah.
And even then, I think it was going to be Waters. I think they were ready to give him the ball and let him run with it out in center field. Him being on the injured list for the start of the season at least, I figure we'll see him hopefully by the end of April at the latest.
Hope so.
But in the meantime, look, Kyle Isbell can go get it. Like, the glove is adequate, more than adequate in center field. The question is he going to hit enough? And again, the returns so far in Kyle Isbell's big league career have not been real encouraging on that front. If he could hit, I think he'd probably start over Olivares in one of the corners by the time Waters comes back. So it's a big opportunity for Isbell, and I hope he runs with it here in the first month of April. If he gets out to a good start, then it makes the outfield picture a little more interesting. Because right now you've got guys with good gloves and guys I think are going to hit, and they're not the same guys.
No. Fulton's going to blow up your phone, by the way, for not immediately saying Kyle Isbell is going to save this franchise. I do want to say this to the center fielder point really quickly. Kyle Isbell has been in the organization for years and years and years and years. They've known for years what he can be, what he is, what they have in him to a degree, at least what he profiles as. They still actively went out and added Drew Waters. Like, that should probably tell you where the organization would prefer to go. And Piccolo specifically was a part of going out and getting Drew Waters.
But I think Kyle Isbell could be a fine fourth outfielder. I do.
Which is a good career.
Yeah. You play in the bigs a long time, being an extra glove, an extra pair of legs, a left-handed bat. Like, there's value in that kind of player, but he's going to get a chance to start the season to prove that he's more than that.
Let's take a quick timeout. Again, we'll get to the pitchers for the Royals coming up tomorrow. We'll get our full season predictions on Wednesday. But on the other side of this timeout today, we've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the week on 580 Sports Talk. Let's find our first daily winner in What Is Wrong With You this week, the final week of the month of March. Brendan and Dan here with you. We'll get to our championship match coming up on Friday. No show on Thursday because of Royals opening day. So we'll do our semifinals on Wednesday, and we will find our monthly champion on Friday this week. We've got two new stories today, though, to start off this shortened week. Dan, I will go first to start today. And we're headed to London, where Southeastern Railway has confirmed that two passengers forced open the doors of one of their trains in Hither Green, Such an English name.
So English.
Which led to the electricity on the tracks having to be turned off and tens of thousands of people's journeys being disrupted in what travelers have described as complete chaos. The operator added that the incident, quote, caused delays to several trains and at some of our stations, meaning crowd management plans had to be activated as if there was an attack or some sort of like major state event because two people just were sick of their train being stuck. Commuters were confronted with dangerous scenes at the London Bridge station as large crowds of passengers bunched together in waiting areas and on platforms. One person tweeted, "Here we go again. Another night, more chaos at London Bridge." What is this, 1520? Honestly, the scenes at London Bridge showed nothing has been learned from the apparent safety review. Why do people have to put up with this? So essentially, the way this all went down, there was a delay. If you've ever been in a big city with public transit, you know what this is like. Sometimes the trains are just slow. You ever been to Chicago and ridden on the Metra? A 6 o'clock train that's supposed to get in at 6:20, I hope you enjoy getting in at 7:30. Like, it just happens sometime. Same thing in London, all across England. And these two guys were just sick of it. So they broke open the doors of the train, of the tube, and then just walked out. And it forced the people in charge of the whole thing to shut off the electricity so they didn't die. And then you said guys walking on the tracks and all the power got shut off to the whole system. Just because they were sick of being delayed.
Yeah, and they ruined it for everybody else.
Tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, a whole lot of everybody else's.
So many people.
It's very, it's entitlement culture, right? I got to get mine. I got to get to my destination. Everybody else's inconvenience is not my problem. My inconvenience is my problem, and I'm going to convenience myself at the expense of others.
Jerk move.
Very American attitude for this story across the pond.
Yeah, right. Maybe it was tourists.
Could have been.
Could have been. What do you have for today?
All right, this story's gross. We are going to New York, where a man allegedly entered a daycare center in Clarkson while it was closed, stole diapers and formula, and left notes behind indicating he wanting to pretend to be a baby girl.
Ew.
We meet 65-year-old Daniel Sealer of Holly, who was taken into custody February 18th, shortly after he ran out the back door of Inspire Learning and Childcare on Lake Road. The center's director told police an employee found $120 along with a handwritten note on January 30th, asking if the daycare had adult-sized diapers and if the staff would, quote, play along. The director says they immediately contacted law enforcement and decided to install a surveillance camera. The director said a similar note was found the following Monday along with $200. So he upped the ante. After receiving an alert that the security system had been activated Saturday morning, February 11th, the director said she arrived at the center to find someone had gone through children's diaper bins and left another note and more money. The note included sizes for pants, shoes, bras, and dresses, with the man indicating he liked to play as a baby girl and called himself Baby Danielle. After receiving another alert the following Saturday morning, the director says she called 911 and saw surveillance videos showing a man playing with diapers and piecing them together to make a bigger one. She says the man went into the bathroom, pulled his pants down, put the diaper on, and then put his pants over it before running out of the building. She said she later found someone drank half a bottle of formula, used a bib, and stole 3 diapers. Police said Sealer, who allegedly entered through a door the director says was locked, fully admitted his involvement and said he was working through addiction. He's being charged with burglary and petty larceny. Released on an appearance ticket after police determined he was not a danger to the facility's children or staff.
Yo, dude. Please seek help. Sounds like he's gonna get some. This is
Yeah,
this is icky.
yeah. Who's in charge of changing that diaper?
Yeah, gross. gross visual. Ick.
Matt on YouTube says you are, Brendan. So I don't know how you got volunteered.
Disagree. That is incorrect, Matt. I will dispute that to its very core. No, man, that's icky. I don't like. Look, if you've got urges, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, right?
But you don't have to steal from literal children to do that. Also, there's just kind of there's a line here. I don't exactly know what it's a line for, but it was crossed. It was very aggressively crossed. Man, that's gross. I think that wins, but I hope we get a better story tomorrow
Me
because
too.
that's gross. All right, that's our winner for today.
The diabolical diaper dude
Ew.
per Vance on YouTube.
Oh man, that story is so nasty.
I like how he dropped $120 and is like, no, how about 200?
I do want to remind you, as we find our weekly winner, we've got some new folks who are sponsoring What Is Wrong With You.
Yes,
starting
we do.
this week. Want to give a shout out to the good folks at Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, saving time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. I assume they knew what they were getting into when we get this gross story to start off. Like, hey, that's it's like March Madness. Sometimes you get the beauty of it. Sometimes you get the grossness of it. That is metal cut to order when you need it. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our new presenting sponsors of What Is Wrong With You. Appreciate you guys. Right now, we need to take a timeout. We'll come back on the other side of this break. The Final Four is set. What are the matchups, and how excited are we? We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. Man, after that last What Is Wrong With You, coming back with the less I know, the better is about as perfect as you can get for bump music. Goodness gracious.
It's also appropriate to discuss the NCAA tournament this year because
Yes.
turned out we knew very little about this bracket.
After the first game on must have been Sunday, I was in the 97th percentile on ESPN in brackets.
Wow.
Like my bracket is awesome, except for the fact I don't have any Final Four teams. Like all of the teams that only won once or twice, like I nailed all of them. And I'm just out of Final Four teams. So my percentile ranking steadily going down over the last couple of days. Brendan and Dan here with you, by the way, on 580 Sports Talk. Appreciate you stopping by on this Monday afternoon. Our Final Four is set. Florida Atlantic, the first team to earn a bid, obviously, for knocking off K-State. They will take on San Diego State, which beat Creighton in a game that was defense heavy, kind of a rock fight. I thought it was a fun game, though. It was exciting. There was a lot of action, if not a lot of scoring.
If you liked the game, if you would like to watch players put the ball in the basket, that was not a game for you.
Everything but actually scoring in that game.
So many bricks.
A lot of bricks.
Lots of clank.
The other national semifinal on the right-hand side of your bracket, Miami, which upset Texas. We'll get to that game momentarily. And then UConn, which I don't know if people like, maybe people who really follow college basketball do. And like, I know UConn has won a bunch. I know they've won 4 national titles all since 1999. I get that. But they're playing for their 5th national title in 25 years. They have been the best program in the sport for a quarter century now. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Have they though? Because they
might have 5 titles.
The highs have been really, really high.
Yeah.
But they don't have like a whole bunch of like those are the only Final Fours. They're sort of like the Miami Marlins of college basketball. Like when they're good, they really cash it in.
Yeah.
They make their trip to the table count. But when they're not there, then it doesn't quite hit the same.
No, I suppose that's true, but man, that's just incomparable championship success. I guess that goes back to the rangs discussion, but
yeah. So in this stretch, and really you can go back to because this was a program that used to make it on a regional level, like in the 50s, and they've got some. They went to an Elite Eight in 1956. They went to check that in 64 they were in an Elite Eight. The era of success for UConn, you could trace it back to 1990. They went to the Elite Eight in 1990. Jim Calhoun was in his 4th year there as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
From there, you have a Sweet 16 in 91. You have a Sweet 16 in 94. You have a Sweet 16 in 96. You have an Elite Eight in 98. And then they start to winning. They win the national title. They upset that great Duke team in 99. They go to an Elite Eight in 02. They go to a Sweet 16 in 03. They win it all in 04. The Emeka Okafor team, clearly kind of building up to that because I believe Okafor was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was I believe you're correct. Senior-laden group of guys. No, check that. He was a junior, but so was Ben Gordon. So, they're obviously freshman, sophomore, junior, Ben Gordon and Emeka Okafor go Elite Eight, Sweet 16, Final Four. That makes sense. You go to another regional final in 06. They go to a Final Four in 09, which I'd kind of forgotten about. They reached the Final Four. That was the Hashim Thabit team. That was freshman year Kemba Walker. AJ Price was the leading scorer.
Mm-hmm.
They go to the Final Four that year. Then they're kind of bad in 2010. Then they win the national championship in 2011, the Kemba Walker year. Then they're a tournament team and Calhoun leaves and Kevin Ollie takes over and they don't make the tournament in 2013. And then they win it all as a 7 seed in the most chaotic NCAA tournament ever in 2014. This is the first time that UConn had been out of the first weekend of the tournament since then.
Wow.
First time they've been out of the first weekend of the tournament. So it is fascinating. When they've been good, they've been really good. The peaks are obviously championship level. Mm-hmm. They've also won some championships that we don't have a lot of stories of a Duke team as a 5 seed winning the Natty, right?
Yeah.
Or the blue bloods that the programs we consider blue bloods, when they win, it's usually not as underdogs.
Right.
UConn seems to thrive in the chaos of the tournament. They seem to thrive as underdogs. And there is something to that, certainly, historically significant. The banners hang forever. But it's why I don't, people insist that UConn's a blue blood. I don't think you can buy your way into being a blue blood. I think the blue bloods are who they are.
They're the new bloods. There's the blue bloods and there's the new bloods. And Connecticut and Villanova lead that group.
Okay. That's fair. I'm not going to consider UConn on the same level as Kansas or North Carolina or Duke or UCLA. I can't do that.
Because those programs have done it forever.
Yeah.
Forever and ever. But, man, they could have 5 in 25 years. It's just crazy to think about. They're the odds-on favorite by a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone expects them to
minus 135 at FanDuel. They're the only ones with minus odds.
After this tournament, that is crazy. But it's understandable. They're taking on that Miami team we just mentioned. It is unbelievable that Texas lost that game. There were 12 minutes left. And again, apparently I was just mushing games all weekend because I thought, oh my God, Miami can make shots. Isaiah Wong made a bunch of shots in the second half. Not Pack had a good game.
Pack kept him in it in the first half with some tough shots.
Their big men, I thought, played well, but they couldn't stop Texas. There was just no stopping. So every time Miami had an empty possession, they went down by more. And I just thought, they don't have enough defense to come back. And then Texas just stopped playing. They just gave up. They just stopped trying. It was incredible.
I just want to know, I know Miami went small and the Walker kid was incredible. He didn't miss a shot. 7 of 7 from the field. I think 13 of 13 from the line.
Yeah. Only the second time in 60 years that's happened.
Amazing performance. And so, you go small and Texas didn't have their main big guy. I think if they had healthy Dylan DeSue, I think that's an X factor that probably helps them over the top.
No doubt.
But you don't have to go so small that Brock Cunningham is playing crunch time minutes. That was mind-boggling coaching from Rodney Terry. That your eighth man is the best thing you've got to match up. You don't trust Christian Bishop. You don't trust the freshman, Dylan Mitchell, who you've trusted to start all season. It's Brock Cunningham in that spot. And not only is it Brock Cunningham, it's Brock Cunningham taking the two biggest shots of the game for Texas. And unsurprisingly, neither of them went in. Look, he played a good first half. He was active on defense. He plays hard. If he's your eighth man, you're good enough to go to an Elite Eight, to be a 2 seed. I got no problem with that. But Miami going small, Rodney Terry did not have a counterpunch for.
Nope.
That was the biggest example of somebody I thought getting outcoached on the weekend was Rodney Terry got outmaneuvered big time by Jim Larrañaga and did not have a plan B. And now he's got a 5-year contract to be the new head coach at the University of Texas.
Yeah, we're going to get to that more coming up here at during headlines at the top of the hour. You know our thoughts on it, but it's happening now, so good luck, Texas. I'm excited for the Final Four. It's fun. It's exciting. KU won last year, so I wasn't as crushed when they got knocked out this year as much as it did hurt. I'm excited for this Final Four because I like the fact that we're getting new programs in. UConn is the best of the bunch that's left, and I think they're a fun team to watch. I love Jim Larrañaga. I'm happy that he is back to the Final Four. 17 years to the day, by the way, from when George Mason made it in 2006. How cool is that? SDSU has been good for a long time. This is kind of their over-the-hump moment. And again, a team that got screwed over by not having the 2020 tournament when they were one of the best teams in the country. I'm glad they get their moment. And FAU is just an awesome story. They got a lot of fun dudes to watch. I like Dusty May. I like the way they play basketball. I am intrigued by this, but I just love college basketball. And I know you love college basketball, but I get why, even if you love the sport, you might say, this is it? This is all we got? I mean, San Diego State has not exactly played a bunch of pretty basketball games to get here.
So there have been a lot of stories, and we even have a text from the 913 here on our text line that says this is the new college basketball. And our texter says that in reference to the fact that San Diego State's average age is older than the Oklahoma City Thunder. We talked about that. Their average age weighted by minutes is 23 years old. So I think there is a school of thought that, well, this is just what college basketball is going to be now. It's about having older, more experienced teams. And this is the kind of Final Four we should expect from here on out. And I think that's half right. I do think experience will come to matter more and more as we go along. But Florida Atlantic was down with 10 seconds left in the first round and did not have the basketball and won that game. San Diego State was tied with the College of Charleston with 3 minutes and 47 seconds left in their first round game. Miami was down 8 to Drake with 5 minutes left in their first round game. Mm-hmm. This is just an example of tournament chaos cranked up to 11. This is not the start of a new era where the Final Four is going to feel like you drew it out of a hat before the tournament began. Mm-hmm. Like just last year, we had North Carolina, we had Duke, we had Kansas.
And Villanova.
And we had Villanova. Like, I don't think this is necessarily the start of, oh man, we're going to see 9 seeds. Now, we have seen 9 or lower seeds in the Final Four a lot more frequently recently. So I think there's something to that. But the idea that, we're just going to get a grab bag Final Four of schools with no basketball history on a more regular basis, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I just think we've had a very chaotic tournament. Florida Atlantic has been very fortunate to survive a lot of really close games. They've made a lot of comebacks. That's a huge credit to them. Miami, kind of the same thing. But when you get into a chaotic tournament, like 2011, like 2014, history says, pick UConn.
I also want to know, because there's been so much talk about, well, now with NIL, it's changed everything. Look at Miami. They gave $800,000 to Nigel Pack. Look where they got. Yes, they did, and that worked for them. And good for Nigel Pack that he got. Great for them. Florida Atlantic plays in an arena that seats under 3,000 people. They're not exactly dropping bags for dudes, right?
No, but they had veterans, they had some transfers, and they have a good coach, and they won a lot of games, learned how to win games, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But as I was saying, like 2011, 2014, randomness means pick the UConn Huskies. And if you're inclined to spend a little money, drop a bag of your own, the tournament's heating up and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/Lucero and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. You can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. Again, I think it'll be UConn. All in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. When you join FanDuel today, just go to FanDuel.com/Lucero, Lucero, to sign up and make every moment more with FanDuel. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help's your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We've got plenty more college basketball to get to next hour, plus a ton of headlines. All that and more is coming up in our final hour on this Monday afternoon edition of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk on this Monday, March 27th, final Monday of the month of March. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thanks so much for being a part of the show and hanging out with us today. If you've missed any of the program so far, you can head to our website. That's 580wibw.com. Head on over to the podcasts tab. Just hover over that and then click on 580 Sports Talk. That's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. You can also, of course, head to YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. If you haven't subscribed as of yet, go and do so. It's free. That's the best way to find all of our video content, including our daily live streams, recap as well from the K-State game on Saturday, all of our other game recaps. And you can go back and rewatch the live streams. They're not just live. You can go back and rewind them or watch them anytime you want. That's, again, on our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Coming up here in this final hour of the show, we are going to get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we've got a bunch of them coming up here in just a matter of moments. We'll also talk some more college basketball and get to your texts and comments. The comment section is open on that aforementioned channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. And, of course, you can hit us up on our text line, 785-272-9429. That is the text line number. Without further ado, though, we got plenty to get to, so let's get to today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. A lot of different ones that we could lead off with here. Let's start, since we've talked so much college basketball, let's start there. We figured we knew this was coming at some point, and then immediately after Texas lost to Miami yesterday, multiple outlets, including 24/7 Sports, reported this was going to happen. Rodney Terry and the University of Texas are working on a long-term contract extension. It appears, the reports are out, it is going to be a 5-year deal worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $15.3 million. That number comes from Boardroom, which is the media conglomerate owned by Kevin Durant. You can understand why they might have some connections with the University of Texas men's basketball program. But about $3 million a year, 5-year deal for Rodney Terry. The report I also saw, and I did not save who this was from, but indicated that the buyout is not going to be nothing. It's not going to be huge, but it'll be fair for both sides in the agreement. So Texas is going to stick with the status quo and keep Rodney Terry around going into the 23-24 season and possibly long beyond that. We've made our thoughts on this very clear. I understand why they did it immediately. I also think it's not the world's best look that right after he got pantsed by Jim Larrañaga yesterday, they offered him a 5-year contract extension. That is different. But I get why they did it. I get that the optics would look bad if this guy led you to an Elite Eight in the face of a horrible situation. Nothing that anyone ever wants to deal with or should have to deal with. Got you there, won the Big 12 tournament, all of this. I understand it. But this guy won 43.5% of his games at UTEP and won like 52% of them at Fresno State. I don't know that he's a good coach. I really don't. We talked so much about the clip we saw of Marcus Carr drawing up plays. And again, in the biggest game of the year, Jim Larrañaga put a clown suit on him. I get it. I understand it. And in terms of what he did this year, I understand the thought that he earned it. But this is going to be an entirely new team next year. It's the final year in the league before they have to move on to completely different competition.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I don't hold any ill will against Rodney Terry, the guy.
Yeah, I'm not anti-Rodney Terry. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's going to be a poor representative of the University of Texas in a way that his predecessor proved to be. I have no ill feelings towards Rodney Terry as a person. When I say I wish him and the University of Texas well, I mean it. As much as I can possibly mean the phrase, I wish the University of Texas well.
Yeah, that last part, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah,
but
sure.
no, it's nothing against Rodney Terry, but if you just took, a silhouette and a fake name and put it over that resume and said, does this guy belong at the University of Texas long term? I don't think the answer is yes.
Yeah, blind resume. You just put his record at Fresno State and UTEP, and if Texas were approaching a brand new coaching search, he doesn't get a phone call. He doesn't get, never mind an interview, he doesn't get a phone call. He doesn't get considered. That being said, it is fair to point out that now part of his resume is number 5 team in the country, conference tournament championship, number 2 seed in the tournament, Elite Eight trip. At a place where Texas hasn't been to a ton of Elite Eights.
Nope.
Like it's not uncharted territory for Texas basketball, but it's also not a tournament trip that you can take for granted. But this is a team that had 6 seniors, and among those 6 seniors were 6 of their 7 leading scorers and 6 of their 9 rotation guys, and 8.5 really. Arterio Morris was kind of in and out depending on the injury status of some of the other players. To me, watching this season, watching Texas, observing Texas, I think it is a valid point to make that the players at Texas appeared to love Rodney Terry very much, have a great deal of fondness for the man. Kind of got a substitute teacher vibe from Rodney Terry.
Yep.
The substitute teacher who doesn't hassle the seniors too hard. So of course they love him because he's not crawling up their shorts about every mistake they made. He's kind of letting them do their thing and letting them take the ownership. And that's all well and good. And it clearly worked with this group. But Rodney Terry's never won at a high level other than this. He's never had to recruit at a high level. And look, recruiting at a place like Texas ought to be like that's playing the game on easy mode, or should be, right?
Yeah.
A lot of basketball talent in the state, certainly a commitment financially, NIL commitment there. They should be able to get some players. I bet they add a big name or two out of the transfer portal. But can they keep it humming like this? Or would you rather, if you were Texas, maybe looked at somebody with a little bit more classroom experience? I think that's where Texas made the mistake. If they went and they did a real coaching search and then decided that, you know what, we just think Rodney Terry's the best cultural fit, he's the best possible fit for us, then I would.
So be it.
Yeah. Then, we're free to disagree, but, then at least you'd feel, I think, a little better about the process that they underwent. But it feels like it's an emotional hire of the substitute teacher that everybody loved. And I don't know, like, again, look to the Southwest and look what happened at Wichita State. When Isaac Brown had to take over that program after Greg Marshall was removed from the head coaching position, really close to the start of the season, Isaac Brown was a well-liked assistant, and he was a substitute teacher, and his players liked him, and they played hard for him, and they had some veteran guys, had some really good players. They won the AAC regular season title, and Isaac Brown got the job without anybody bothering at Wichita State to ask, hey, could we maybe aim a little higher? Because the expectations here are really, really high. We've been to a Final Four in recent memory. We've had an undefeated regular season. The bar is really high here. Should we maybe look for somebody with a little bit more of a reputation for getting teams to that level? And that was not a question anybody asked at Wichita State. They gave the job to Isaac Brown, and now he doesn't have the job anymore. Lickety split, he doesn't have a job anymore. So
you could get anyone at Texas.
Yes.
You've got the coffers to bring out a contract for anyone in the country, save for like Bill Self, John Shire, and that might be it. Like you're
not hiring Hubert.
Yeah.
But would you want Hubert Davis?
No,
Let's be honest. Like,
I mean,
you're not hiring Mark Few, probably.
Mark Few, okay. Like, you're not getting those guys, but you could have anyone else you wanted. Why not at least do an interview?
Yeah, do a coaching search is what I would say. And look, I understand if you're at Texas, you maybe feel like, well, the last time we went for the hot name, it was Shaka Smart. And that didn't really work out.
Yeah.
And then we went for somebody with Texas ties who'd won at a high level, and that was Chris Beard. And we don't know how that was going to work out because never really got the chance to get off the ground because he's made some bad decisions. So now I guess they're going with the safe hire. It'll be a popular hire. Certainly, from what I've been able to view on social media, it's a well-received hire in the industry, and it's well-received by some prominent University of Texas former players, and I'm sure like donors, people who are close to the program. That always helps, but I mean, we'll see. That's all I can say about it. This doesn't feel like a slam dunk to me. It may work, and good for Rodney Terry and good for Texas if it does, but this doesn't feel like a slam dunk. Not to me.
I mean, every single detail there is the same thing that Wichita State went through. Tons of former players like, yeah, give IB the job.
Mm-hmm.
Players wanted that badly. And
Mm-hmm.
again, you can understand, you can rationalize it, but I don't know. And I saw someone make that argument about Wichita State. I think it was on Twitter, or maybe it was somewhere else, a message board or something. And they said, yeah, but It's like Texas gets players better than Wichita State can. They've got a bigger draw than that.
Yes, but they have to.
Well, yeah, sure. They also don't have to play Tulane and Tulsa on their schedule.
Yeah.
They get Kansas and Kansas State and
moving forward, it's going to be Kentucky
and Alabama,
and Arkansas.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Best of luck to them, but
yeah. A texter from the 316 on the text line points out that Isaac Brown also had difficulties because Wichita State didn't have an NIL collective in place, didn't have their NIL ducks in a row, which is certainly a reason why recruiting and maintaining players, keeping them out of the transfer portal has been an issue for Wichita State over the last couple of years. The texter also says, that being said, he didn't feel like a good schemer with a game plan. I would certainly agree with that. There were a lot of games where I watched Wichita State fall apart in the late stages, kind of like I watched Texas fall apart in the Elite Eight game yesterday. That's all I'm saying.
He won less than 44% of his games at UTEP.
Seems like a really nice guy, and I hope for good things for good people, but we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see. I've been wrong before.
And you know what? We'll see soon because Big 12 is unrelenting.
Yes. And look, I've been wrong before, loudly and relentlessly, and I've probably been wrong like 4 different times just on today's show. But we'll see. I feel pretty good about saying that at the very least they should have done a real coaching search.
I agree with that.
Big NFL headline today. We touched on it when we had Matt Verderame on the program in the 3 o'clock hour, which you can listen back to on our podcast page at 580wibw.com. Lamar Jackson has requested a trade from the Baltimore Ravens. He put out like a 3-tweet thread on Twitter about it right as John Harbaugh was speaking to the media at the AFC coaches breakfast at the annual league meeting today. Could not have timed it any more, well, perfectly in some eyes, maybe harshly in others. Anyhow, Jackson tweeted that he requested the trade on March 2nd as he feels the Ravens have not been interested in meeting his value in contract talks. He said in his tweet, "I love the game of football. My dream is to help a team win the Super Bowl. Ravens fans are great, but I had to make a business decision that was best for my family and I." John Harbaugh naturally asked about this, probably ruined his breakfast.
I'm sure.
Said, quote, "I haven't seen the tweet. It's an ongoing process. I'm following it very closely, just like everyone else here. I'm looking forward to a resolution. I don't know what direction it's going to go. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell the future, but I know whatever happens is going to be good. It's going to be okay. I have my hopes. I love Lamar Jackson." I am not surprised that this has gotten to this point. The Ravens clearly don't want to give Lamar Jackson a fully guaranteed deal. Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent right now that could maybe help and guide his client a little bit. He's talking to a dude trying to sell like a home workout gym on Twitter, talking to like a fake Billy Blanks or something like that is his top advisor right now. I don't know what all is going on there. It's very confusing, very weird, but I do know this. And Matt Verderame laid this out for us. Baltimore holds all the cards here. Lamar Jackson's leverage is 0. He can sit out. He doesn't have to report, but he costs himself a lot of money and he doesn't get to play football if he does that. So all the cards are in the hands of the Baltimore Ravens. And I still firmly believe that the next snap of football Lamar Jackson plays is going to be in a Ravens uniform. I firmly believe that.
I just don't know who's gonna budge first. You'd think it has to be Lamar. This is when you need an agent, guys. Like, I understand wanting to go into business for yourself. You don't have to pay the 10% or 15%, whatever the rate is to get an agent. Like, I understand the desire to do that. You need an agent because you would not end up in this situation. Even Orlando Brown, whose agent I don't necessarily think is all that good at his job based on the data we've gotten over the last couple of years. He's still got a big payday. He's still got the big money short-term contract, and he'll be a free agent again in 3 years probably. I mean, it worked out for him. I don't know. I think Lamar is going to stay as a Raven as well. I think eventually he is going to sign the tag and he is going to play this year. You really can't have him go into a lame duck year. I just don't know, to Matt's point from earlier when Matt Verderame joined us, who's going to pay for that? And is it a collusion thing? Probably. It's like unprovable collusion to a degree, but this is what happens when the Browns give out a contract that was undeserved. Because Lamar is right. He deserves, at bare minimum, the contract that Deshaun Watson got. He does, because if you're saying the scale of what you get paid is based on how good of a player you are, I am better than Deshaun Watson, and he got $230 million fully guaranteed. Well, that means if I'm better than him, and thus, based on how this business works, I deserve more money, then I deserve a fully guaranteed deal for more value than Deshaun Watson got. He's right about that. That the logic is 100% right. But, like, if you're the Ravens, I don't know what the Ravens, cash flow numbers are like. I have no idea. But I would imagine they would like to keep Lamar, but I just don't know. I do not know how this is going to end. I assume Lamar is going to end up a Raven in 2023. Is it with a new contract? Is it a one-year thing? I have no idea. This is bizarre. This is a truly bizarre situation that we are in with this.
We have a couple of texts on this on the text line from the 785. First, if Lamar's dead set a fully guaranteed deal, the agent can't make him sign it. Well, yeah, because he's his own agent. That's part of the problem here. He's not getting very good advice, not getting any advice. So that's part of the issue. And certainly he doesn't have to sign the franchise tag. He doesn't. He doesn't have to play. He can do what, and another texter drops this name from the 785, says this is Le'Veon Bell revisited. He can do what Le'Veon Bell did. Le'Veon Bell sat out the entire 2018 season. Didn't play it down.
Yeah.
And then in the 3 years that were left of his career after that holdout, he rushed for fewer yards than he did in the entirety of the 2017 season, which should have gotten him paid in the first place. Like, I would think Le'Veon Bell would be a cautionary tale for Lamar Jackson.
You'd think.
Like, go get your money and go play and, go ball out. Go have another great year. Go have an undeniable year. Go win another MVP, because apparently people forget he won one. Go be that guy, and then you will have your asking price met.
It's the era we are entered in with the NFL where the quarterback means everything, but also teams are either willing to just pay for guys who clearly can't win you a Super Bowl and also are not willing to pay guys, and we're just talking surface level here, aren't willing to pay guys who have won MVPs who we think are Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. That's crazy to think about, that all those things can exist at the same time, but I don't know. I do not know how this is going to come to a head. I hope that he signs a long-term deal because he's a great player, and the few Ravens fans I know, I've got a couple good friends who are Ravens fans, actually. They are all very sad.
Yeah, and I don't mean to come off as like I'm chastising Lamar Jackson entirely here. Like, I think he's the only one in the wrong, because I do think it's a little fishy that he's not getting the big contract that other quarterbacks have gotten. Other quarterbacks that aren't as accomplished as Lamar Jackson. Other quarterbacks I don't think are as good as Lamar Jackson. And they've cashed out. And there should be a big payday for Lamar Jackson. And I don't blame Lamar Jackson for looking at the payday that some lesser players have gotten and thinking, where's mine?
Mm-hmm.
I want mine. Because you only get one shot at it. And so it's not so much that I think Lamar Jackson is wrong, but at the same time, he's going to have to decide, the closer this gets to training camp and the start of the season, do you really have it in you to sit and forfeit $2 million? What would $2 million a game?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's what it is. That's what, plus any fines that the team could issue. Like, most guys, they don't make it to that point. They might sit a couple of days to prove a point, and then they sign the tag, and then they go and play. That's what Orlando Brown Jr. did last year. Again, different circumstances, but yeah, to me, this feels like nobody wins, and none of this dance really comes to anything, and Lamar Jackson suits up for the Ravens in 2023. It's all kind of much ado about nothing.
I will only chastise Lamar Jackson because I think it's dumb he doesn't have an agent. Like, it does.
Yes, that is silly.
It does not work. Russell Okung, good player for a long time. Remember the first deal he signed after he decided he was going to represent himself? He got a multi-year deal with like no guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And then he wanted money in Bitcoin, which was also not smart. Richard Sherman. Do you remember what happened when Richard Sherman signed his contract with the 49ers as a free agent a few years ago? Do you remember the NFLPA stepping in to renegotiate a completed contract because it was such a bad deal?
Yeah.
And that was lauded as, like, I just saw, because I had to look up the details of it. There was a piece from SB Nation about how he won a bet on himself. Dude, his bosses essentially had to come in and say, no, you screwed this up. And the 49ers were willing to do it. It was such a bad deal.
And Richard Sherman, not a dumb guy.
No.
Like, not an idiot, not a moron, but
that's not his expertise.
Right. Let people who are trained to do this stuff, who are experts with this stuff, do it for you.
There's a life lesson for a lot of different things in that final comment, so I think we will leave that one at that. A couple local headlines. Let's get you here on our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. We've got one on K-State. Gene Taylor, your FBS Athletic Director of the Year. I think that's a pretty darn good award to hand out because he hired Chris Kleiman. He hired Jerome Tang. And K-State is the only team in the country to have won a conference championship and made an Elite Eight this year in both football and men's basketball.
That's right. It was the FBS AD of the Year. The National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics bestowed this award. And it is extremely well-deserving because not only did Gene Taylor hire these coaches, but he is presiding over an athletic department right now that feels fresh and forward-thinking and energized and ready in the new landscape of the Big 12 and college athletics to elevate itself. And I think they are so well-positioned for the future right now in Manhattan. And I think Gene Taylor deserves a ton of credit for that.
They have really good teams. They are, at least along the curve with the rest of the good college football and basketball programs out there in terms of what they're doing with NIL. They have a great social media presence that has gotten nothing but better over the last 2 or 3 years, which matters, by the way. You might think, oh, who cares? No, that matters to people. I mean, everything has been great under the last couple of years under his leadership. So that makes a ton of sense. We also know the KU women, they are on to the Fab Four. They can't say Final Four. They're on to the Fab Four of the women's NIT. They will host Washington coming up on Wednesday at Allen Fieldhouse. KU also just announced first 350 students who are there will get free tickets into the game.
They drew well over 4,000.
Yeah. They've done pretty darn well. They had a border war during this run. They finally beat Arkansas. Somebody had to beat Arkansas from KU and end their season.
Right.
So very thankful for that. No, this has been fun. They were the last team out of the NCAA tournament this year. They were seed 69. Only 68 get in. And use the Michael Jordan meme. I took that personally.
Yeah.
They've played really darn well. They've been blowing teams out.
Yeah, Holly Kerskeeter played great the other night, and it's been really cool to see that, obviously the NIT it's not the tournament you really want to be in, but it's also an opportunity to play for a championship. It's an opportunity to play some more games on your campus site. And it's been pretty cool to see people get behind the KU women, just as it was cool to see people get behind the K-State women when they ran to the Super 16, I think it was. They were eliminated by Washington, who is incidentally the next opponent for Kansas.
Yeah, the women's NIT is not affiliated with the NCAA itself, so they can't use the same wording that the NCAA tournaments or the men's NIT use. So it's the Super 16, the Great 8, and then the Fab 4 instead of the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final 4. Also, we have to get to this. Major news on the crime beat today.
Oh, yes. We love to follow up on what is wrong with you when we get the opportunity.
And folks, we regret to inform you that Chiefsaholic is at it again.
Chiefsaholic is on the lam, folks. He is at large.
This was the most predictable possible outcome for this.
Xavier Michael Babadar, a.k.a. Chiefsaholic, was due in court Monday in Tulsa County for that whole thing where he robbed a bank, allegedly, with a gun, allegedly. Court records show that not only did he fail to show up for district court arraignment, but also that he removed his ankle monitor. And the DA plans to file a charge of removing an electronic monitoring device. That is a felony. So you can go ahead and add that to the scoreboard for our guy, Chiefsaholic, who is, at large.
Like, you've gotten, if you're a career criminal like our guy Chiefsaholic, I mean, you have to know you can't cut the band on the monitor. Like, you have to know you can't do that.
That it is a really bad idea.
Maybe he just is going to go down swinging. Like, you know what?
blaze of glory.
What do I care? What? I'm already going to prison.
Maybe he's going to go cash all his slips for, all his futures. Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, Mahomes to win MVP, any other futures he's got. And he's going to use all that to, build himself a new identity and, I don't know, sail to Costa Rica and live out the rest of his life as a fugitive from justice.
Yeah, I'm wondering where he'll end up.
This is going to be the best Netflix movie ever. I can't wait for we're past the point of documentary. Like, this is going to be like a feature film, and I can't wait.
Super fan. The Chiefsaholic story. Netflix. Hit me up.
I'm so in.
This is so predictable. Like, I could have told you this guy wasn't going to show up to court.
Yeah, like, we're not sitting here like, man, I can't believe Chiefsaholic skipped bail and cut his ankle monitor.
He was such a stand-up guy.
That's not like him.
Oh my God. Any other headlines?
No,
for
we
you?
have to end it there.
We are going to stop with Chiefsaholic. Those are our 580 Sports Talk headlines. I'm sure, give it a couple weeks, I'm sure we'll get another follow-up when they find him in Barbados or whatever. We got to take a break. We'll come back. Dan's got a mystery college basketball question for us next on 580 Sports Talk. .35 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. Thanks so much for being a part of the show today. All right, Dan, I've been waiting for a few hours for this. You told me earlier you've got a college basketball question for me.
It's a jumping off point for a larger discussion, I think, about college basketball. But who is the biggest star left in March Madness? Who's the biggest star left?
The biggest star left in March Madness is, great question. It is not really anybody. I mean, there's not, like, to the quote unquote casual viewer, there's nobody on saying, no one is saying, oh man, I can't wait to watch Matt Bradley on Saturday night. Like, that doesn't stand out to anyone. If you look at FAU, I mean, there's
Janelle Davis has been a really good story for people following the tournament to pay attention to, but
yeah,
like, I didn't watch FAU on this past weekend and think, oh man, I got 2 or 3 potential NBA guys on that roster. Like,
right.
I didn't think that.
On the Miami roster, I mean, my answer honestly might be Nigel Pack, and the only reason why is because the quote unquote casual college basketball fan would say, hey, didn't he get paid a bunch? This guy got money, right?
Him and Isaiah Wong had the big NIL deals.
Yeah.
Isaiah Wong was ACC Player of the Year. That used to be a way bigger deal.
Yeah. Well, that league stunk so badly this year.
And then UConn's really fascinating too, right? In the sense that they've been really good all year. They spent some time number 1 in the country in the AP poll, but they don't have like a superstar.
No, they've got a bunch of really good players to people who follow the sport. Like, oh yeah, Sanogo's great. Hawkins, awesome player. But no one who's transcendent. You mentioned the old UConn teams. People knew who Emeka Okafor was.
Yeah, Ben Gordon, Rudy Gay.
Yeah.
Like, UConn used, like, even Kemba Walker was that guy.
Yes. Oh, he was absolutely that guy. And if he wasn't at the start of that postseason, he was certainly by the start of the NCAA tournament.
So there's a right answer to this question, but it is a bit of a trick question.
All right, hold on. Let me. Who's the biggest superstar left? Are you thinking of a coach?
I am not.
Okay. I was going to say, like, how big of a deal is Danny Hurley?
You've already said their name on the broadcast today.
Okay.
You've already said her name on the show today.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Caitlin Clark of Iowa is the biggest star left in March Madness. She had 40-point triple-double last night. Had the internet going nuts. Like,
yeah, it was crazy. I watched the really more than a half. I jumped in probably late second quarter and watched it. She was incredible.
So Iowa played Louisville in the women's Elite Eight last night, and Caitlin Clark is Iowa's star. And if you haven't watched her play basketball, I don't know what to tell you except to say you should remedy that and watch her play basketball. She had 40-point triple-double in that game. Haley Van Lith on the other side for Louisville was like 6th in the country in scoring, and she had 27 points, and she was absolutely powerless against Caitlin Clark. Who's the second biggest star in March Madness?
Well, by this, given the tone of this discussion, I would guess you're thinking of Aaliyah Boston.
I am thinking of Aaliyah Boston, the star center for South Carolina, who plays Maryland tonight to determine which of those teams goes through to the Final Four.
Should be a good game. Maryland's pretty good.
I was watching Game Theory with Bomani Jones on HBO the other night, and he made a point that has stuck with me, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about the point that he has made. College basketball at its best, college basketball at its most popular, was college basketball with recognizable brand names, with recognizable star players, with recognizable coaches on the sidelines. We see that less and less in men's college basketball today. We see all of those things less and less. This is the first NCAA tournament that I can recall. And maybe if you even went back a handful of years, you'd be able to point to another couple of tournaments and say this about them. But this is the first NCAA tournament I can recall where there was not a team or a player that you had to see. There was not a player like, there's no Zion Williamson in this tournament.
No.
Right? There's no Paolo Banchero in this tournament.
No.
They're like the number 1 and the number 2.
Anthony Davis.
There's no Anthony Davis in this tournament. There's no, there's no Ja Morant in this tournament. Where, oh man, this guy was performing in obscurity at a mid-major, but he's going to be he's an unbelievable talent. You got to watch him play.
Have you heard of this guy?
Yes. The college basketball players that passed the grandma test. Like your grandma has heard of this college basketball player. Now, as the tournament goes, because it's such a cultural force in the way that it is, there are players who maybe pass the grandma test. I think Marquise Noel, even in defeat, he might pass the grandma test for a lot of people, where your grandma, who doesn't follow sports, knows who this person is. That's what I'm saying. This is not an insult to grandmothers. This is just a generalization.
Yeah.
But in the men's tournament, we didn't get that this year. And we may not see a whole lot of that moving forward. Like recognizable brand name players and coaches. We do not have that so much in the men's game right now. Mike Krzyzewski's not on the sideline. Roy Williams is on the sideline. Jim Boeheim just retired. Jay Wright is gone. Star players who, like, guys who hang around for extended periods of time in the college game and make you feel a type of way about them, like whether you loved or hated Christian Laettner, right? Mm-hmm. Or like even some of the guys that were stars in the 90s, they would even stick around 2 years. Rasheed Wallace was in North Carolina for 2 years. Jerry Stackhouse was there for 2 years. Tim Duncan stuck around at Wake Forest for 4 years. Like, having those guys, I think, makes the NCAA tournament more exciting. Having those characters, it makes it a little more fun to follow. The women's game now is where you find this stuff. That's the point Bomani Jones was making. The recognizable coaches, Dawn Staley, Gino Auriemma, Kim Mulkey. The recognizable players, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Angel Reese at LSU, who also punched their ticket to the Final Four last night.
Maddie Siegrist at Villanova set scoring records this year.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that we've seen viewership numbers go up for the women's tournament, where you've seen viewership numbers trend in the other direction for the men's tournament. Because this is the thesis of of this segment, Brendan, is that women's college basketball is giving us more of what we want from college basketball than men's college basketball is right now.
You know, it's I think the reason why we end up in this spot is because of the way the pro game shakes out for men and women. Like the men's game, we are going to have fewer and fewer I agree with that. There's going to be fewer and fewer guys who are that can't miss. Oh my, you have to see Zion. You've got to see Banchero. You've got to see Davis. There's going to be fewer and fewer of those guys. Like, look at the last couple of national champions, and that's not that this is the only way to look at it, but KU was a veteran-dominated team. Baylor the year before was a veteran-dominated team.
We're probably going to get a third straight champion with an average age of weighted by minutes over 21 years.
So, and I mean, just look at the best teams out there. They have found more success by going older, experienced, et cetera. And I know the COVID things have changed it, but the best players are sometimes around for 1 year. You know, Banchero was a college guy last year. And he was darn good, but Victor Wembanyama this year, number 1 pick in the draft. No doubt about it. He's a European player. Did not come over to play college basketball. Scoot Henderson, who any other year, save for, 84, would be the number 1 pick in the draft. He decided not to go to college. He's playing in the G League.
Yeah.
And more guys have decided to do that. They go to the Overtime Elite program. They just go overseas, like the younger of the Ball brothers. They went, well, they've had a different situation, but they went and played in the Australian League, the NBL. You're getting into more of it's becoming more niche in a way because there's less star power. But the NBA, they have the G League option. You can play basketball all over the world and make money before going to the NBA. The NBA lets you join up as 1 year out of college, 1 year after you turn 18, I think is the exact rule. The women's game, you have to play college basketball for 3 years. There is no one and done in the college game. Because honestly, if there was, Aaliyah Boston would be in her third year in the NBA or the WNBA at this point.
Paige Beckers would have been a one and done.
Yeah.
We even get to
Paige Beckers sits and just plays in the WNBA.
We didn't even get to see Paige Beckers this year. We get to see UConn at their best.
And you have that. You also have the fact, and this is, I assume this will change at some point because more people watch women's basketball, more people care about women's basketball. They get paid, like, relative to professional athletes, nothing in the WNBA. Like, Caitlin Clark is probably making 3 times as much right now at Iowa in NIL money what she will make on her first WNBA contract. Honestly, it might be 4 or 5 times as much. Like, why not? So you get star players. You get the Caitlin Clarks, the Aaliyah Bostons, the Maddie Siegrist, the Angel Reese. They want to stick around.
And look, you and I we're younger, and I think that we have a different perspective on certain things than other people do. And we have a different perspective on NIL and the transfer portal than other people do. But I know I do, and I'm sure you do as well, hear from people all the time who don't like the transfer portal, who don't like NIL, who think that it fractures teams, it sends players all over the country so they feel like they're free agents. Guys that play at 2 or 3 different schools, so you don't recognize the teams, and you don't get to like embrace the players in a way that you used to be able to do in the men's game. Like you could do it in the women's game because those players aren't going anywhere. There's not a huge there's an NIL market for the super duper stars, but for the most part, like if you're a KU basketball fan, yeah, you're all about the men. Of course you are. It's a great program. It's a winning program, but you also get a chance to watch Holly Kurski play for 4 years or Tiana Jackson play for 4 years. If you're a K-State fan, you're looking forward to seeing Aoka Lee back next year.
Yeah, you are.
Those kinds of things, I think, are more of what people who like college basketball want from college basketball. I think that they're getting that more from the women's game right now than the men's game. And I don't necessarily know if there's going to ever get to a point where the women's game outrates the men's game in terms of like TV ratings or what is paid for their TV deals. But I do think it's not an accident that like there's buzz around the women's tournament now. People are watching it. People are talking about it, and people are talking about it in positive ways too, not rolling their eyes at it. Like the online reaction to what Caitlin Clark did last night, overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Like she can ball, man or woman, doesn't matter. She can play. And so I think that is my thesis. And that was the reason behind my question, is that college basketball, the things that people love about college basketball, you're getting more of that now from the women's game than you are the men's game. That's absolutely true. And if you haven't seen Caitlin Clark, by the way, she's awesome. It really, really, yes, it's just watch the Final Four. Watch her play. All apologies to Maryland. They'll probably make me look bad by beating South Carolina, but nobody has beaten South Carolina yet. Yeah, so I feel pretty safe betting on Don Staley and the Gamecocks tonight. Watch that Iowa-South Carolina game. That will be a better basketball game than San Diego State, Florida Atlantic. I promise you. Before we get to a commercial break, because we do need to take one here, as we told you last week, we have tickets to opening day for the Kansas City Royals to give away. We're going to name our winners tomorrow, which means right now, from now until we get to the final word, we are taking your registration to be part of our competition. We've got a 4-pack to give away and a 2-pack of tickets to give away. We will announce the winners coming up tomorrow on the show. So all we need you to do right now to enter, and if you already entered on Friday, don't bother. You're already in. You're already in the hopper. Text in to our text line, 785-272-9429. We need your first and last name. If you've already registered from last week or earlier today on Mic'd Up, you're good to go. But register right now, 785-272-9429. All we need is your full name, and you will be entered to win one of our 2 Royals opening day ticket giveaways. That'll be open for the next 5 minutes or so. Right now, we need to take a quick timeout. We're back with more 580 Sports Talk after this.
Don't forget, we are still taking your entries on the text line, 785-272-9429. If you want to be registered to win one of our sets of Royals opening day tickets at the K, opening day on Thursday, hit us up on the text line right now, 785-272-9429. All we need is your first and last name. We need both of them, but send them both in, and you will be registered for one, or to enter, to win one of our ticket giveaways for this week. By the way, how about a great example of being passive-aggressive and scathing at the same time? So Aaron Rodgers is getting traded, right? Eventually, he's going to be traded from the Packers to the Jets.
We assume so.
Brian Gutekunst, the GM of the Packers, speaking today at the NFL owners' meetings, said about Aaron Rodgers, quote, "Certainly, whenever a player may have issues, you prefer that they talk to you directly and not do it in the media. But that's not necessarily the way he goes about it. And that's okay." He is done with this. And I get it, because I think I am too.
Oh, we talk about the Ravens holding all the cards with the Lamar Jackson situation. The Packers still hold all the cards with Aaron Rodgers. They just keep him, and they don't have to play him.
No, the Packers owe him tons of money regardless. Like, it's either $45 million or $60 million they owe him. Like, at that point, it doesn't really make a difference. The Jets have to start Zach Wilson if they don't make a trade. The Packers have a plan. There's going to be cash poor for a year. Like, the Jets would have to start Zach Wilson and would throw away a year of young, cheap Breece Hall, a year of young, cheap Garrett Wilson, a year of their affordable defense. And it's also Robert Saleh's job on the line. So
yeah, that too. They've got a lot, and they're going to have to come up off of what the Packers want.
We might get to this later in the week. Some NFL win totals came out this week.
Mm-hmm.
Even assuming they'll have Aaron Rodgers, the Jets were still only at 9.5. Are you gonna make that trade for a guy who's gonna add like
2 wins?
2 wins?
Ooh. Well,
I hope so.
Yeah, that's the broader question. Like, what are you really getting from Aaron Rodgers? Because he did just miss the playoffs. Like, are you getting the guy who won the MVP 2 years ago? Because as we've talked about many, many times on this show, for quarterbacks, even the great ones, when it goes in a hurry.
Yep.
It goes before you expect it, but when it goes, it's gone.
I'm doing a little side Packers draft project, and I was watching some film from this past year. I will always love Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback. Oh, my God, this year was brutal. It was worse than I remembered it being. We've got to get to a break. Don't forget to enter our Royals ticket contest, 785-272-9429. We've got a final word coming up next. All right, registration now closed to try to enter our Royals ticket giveaway for opening day. We will announce the winners of both the 4-pack and the 2-pack coming up tomorrow on Mic'd Up and 580 Sports Talk. Thank you so much for entering. All right, Dan, let's get to a quick final word.
Final word for me today. If you see Chiefsaholic, do not approach him, but inform the authorities. He is on the lam. I don't know if he should be considered armed or dangerous. I'll let the police decide that, but he's cut off his ankle monitor. He is on the lam. If you see him around, if you see him flying into view in a wolf mask, talking about Patrick Mahomes or 10-leg parlays, alert,
You know who to call.
Alert the local authorities.
Final word for me, K-State fans. I know that the loss on Saturday hurts, and it will continue to hurt possibly for a long time. Take at least a moment to remember how fun this year was. And just think, even brighter days ahead. If you've really got the right coach, you've really got the right core, the right AD too, you're going to be in the national spotlight for quite some time, even though the way this year ended, certainly not the way you were hoping for. That will do it for 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. Coming up tomorrow, we will talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net for Jayhawk Weekly. We'll talk about Royals pitchers for the year, so buckle in for that one. And we'll get to so much more. That's all tomorrow from 3 to 6. For Dan, I'm Brendan. Thanks for listening to 580 Sports Talk.